Good morning, everyone, on a beautiful Sunday morning in Australia and around the world, and it will be Saturday evening for all of our American friends. Thank you for giving your time up to spend time with us today. We're going to talk today, we've got 4 amazing speakers, which will talk about how to grow your practice faster while working less hours. Now, I've been very fortunate to bring some amazing people together. We've got Professor Tom Larkin from Lexington, Kentucky. We have Dr. Michael Cernick from New South Wales. We have Dr. John Hagliasis and Dr. Prabhan Gautam from Victoria in Australia. And myself, I've flown over from South Australia so that we can get started today. We all have half an hour to speak on a really interesting topic, some really interesting topics, and we've all chosen things which are really dear to our hearts. Please stick around, make yourselves really comfortable, get your Ugg boots on, make sure you've got a coffee in your hand. We'll have a Q&A at the end, so even though you'll be muted throughout, keep some notes, and we're more than happy to stick around as long as we need to answer your questions. And over to my very dear friend, Mr. Prabhan Gautam. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. That was really good. Thank you. Welcome. I can see a number of the viewers are checking it right now. So thank you so much. Be comfortable. And before we kick off the day, I can see a number of the attendees joining. So please, feel comfortable. Now, also, I want to say that thank you for all our partners who have supported and the donations, the contributions you have made. We are funding to Australian Dental Health Foundations. And some of the sponsors or the supporters are Dental Innovations Network, Australian Dentists, MW Partners, and Aorta. We are really honored to have support. All the support from all the sponsors. Now, before we start our first speaker, I want to quickly introduce to Dr. Larkin. So, Dr. Larkin is a native of Nebraska and graduated of Creighton University School of Dentistry. He's joining from USA, having worked both as a clinical in private practice and as a professor at 2 universities. Dr. Larkin brings a unique blend of common sense and practicalities to his work. He has written 3 books on dental practice management and 2 on oral wellness. Having intensive experience in both dental startups and clinical protocols, Dr. Larkin is a popular podcaster and co-host of the podcast Hygiene Superstar. He's a founder of POW. I'm sure you might be thinking, what is POW? Proactive Oral Wellness, POW, or coaching and implementation program, and is introducing his program, the Larkin Protocol, which I'm sure many of our guests here, whether that may be a dental practice owner, dentist, or practice manager, or you are a hygienist, you might be aware of the Larkin Protocol. So he's the one to bring this program, Larkin Protocol, to Australia with the assistance of Sue Rosalyn of Talking Dental. So I would like to introduce and welcome to Dr. Larkin. Thank you, Tom. Great to have you today.
Morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Great to have you. So I'll give you all the control. Yeah, please go ahead.
It's an honor to be with such an esteemed panel. I've been working in Australia for about the past 6 months, and I'm just totally fascinated with your culture and the amazing clinicians that I'm meeting. So I hope you find this interesting. I'm just going to jump right in and get to my presentation. Thank you. Okay. So the title of my presentation is The Future of Dentistry by Design. And that's as opposed to how most dentists do it. Most dentists design their practices a little bit too random for my liking. And I like to tell stories about history. So here's my first story, the 40-inch rows. In the very early days of agriculture in North America, row crops were planted at a width of 40 inches. The reason why that width was chosen was because that's the width of an ox or a mule. Now, in the late 1800s, with the first powered implements, some were steam engines and some were gas engines. And here's one with the steel wheels. And this is one of the first corn implements. And if you look and see, those are 40-inch rows. And once again, the reason was because of the width of an ox or a mule. But as you see, there's no ox or mule there. And about 5% of the farmers at this period of time figured out that if they narrowed their rows, they could double or triple their production. But it took nearly a quarter of a century for the rest of the farmers to figure out that concept. And as you see today, you're not going to see a lot of 40-inch rows. Agriculture is extremely sophisticated, and it's a pretty amazing industry to watch. So dentistry has a 40-inch row, believe it or not, and I call it the notched metal stick, or as you may refer to it, the periodontal probe. This instrument has been around since 1890, and we are detecting periodontal disease today as they did in 1890, and that's why I call it dentistry's 40-inch rows. So I'm going to take you on a little bit of a journey, and we're going to talk about current market conditions, and I'm going to take you on a journey. We're going to end up specifically talking about the dental hygiene component of your practice. But let's look at the dental landscape today. Dentistry has problems. I don't know where numerically corporate dentistry is, but it's a problem in America, and I'm sure it's a problem in most areas in the world. So the concept is this: a young dentist, no responsibilities, show up, do dentistry, and you go home happy. But wait, there's a catch. Patients are often pushed or manipulated into treatment. These are disease-centered treatment plans predominantly. There's a lot of performance-based compensation, which puts pressure on the doctor and pressure on the assistants. It's a high-stress environment. Teams are rarely on board. It becomes a job, and there's a lot of competition. So the things that are difficult for young dentists to achieve are fulfillment, meaning, and feeling comfortable long-term. Tremendous amount of turnover. Many times they use corporate dentistry as a launching pad to learn a little bit of skills, and they move on. So let's talk about practice management, because I wrote my first book on practice management 25 years ago when I first started teaching part-time at the university, and I saw the need. Dentists receive very poor training on the business aspects of running a dental practice in school. They receive zero training in the business of dental hygiene. And I'm going to talk about dental hygiene later. Sue Ruslan has been such an important person for me to meet. She's an amazing individual that understands this so well. And it's a 1/3 component of your business. And so I always use the example, it's like owning a McDonald's franchise that opens at noon. You have no breakfast menu at all. You have no Egg McMuffins. You're only open 2/3 of the day unless you take the time to learn the potential of that 1/3 of your business. So as a result of this, most dentists will tell you they hate the business side of dentistry, and they dislike managing people and processes because they're not trained properly. But this is my total take on this, and this is what I tell the students. If you don't take the time to learn the skills to manage your life and potentially a dental practice, there are a multitude of people that are more than happy to employ you at a cost of approximately 50% of your earning potential and 100% of your freedom. And that's important. So let's look at what freedom is. It's freedom of time to decide when and where you want to work. It's freedom to choose, who am I going to work with? It's freedom to create your personal identity as a dentist. Freedom to choose the treatment plan for each patient. Freedom to make as much money or as little money as you desire. And freedom to develop your philosophy of practice. And I think this is central. So in my first book of practice management 25 years ago, I unveiled what I called the secret sauce. And this was the 4 points. Excellent interpersonal skills. Dr. Mike Cernick has spent a lifetime on this, and he's been so spot on in knowing that this is number 1. Number 2 is great office systems. Number 3 is good marketing skills. And number 4 is average clinical skills. The majority of continuing education in our country is geared to number 4. That is a mistake. That is a mistake. So Harvard backs me up. 60% of success in business is because of relationships, people, communication. 25% from organizational skills, 15% from technical skills. Dental students, they know that they're lacking technical skills on graduation, but it's out of sequence, okay? So let's look at the marketplace today. Growth of corporate dentistry, the commoditization of dentistry. I'm going to take you to some current trends and future trends. Consumerism. I make my students learn this word. It's a social and economic order that encourages the purchase of goods and services in greater amounts. You have to promote and encourage what the consumer wants, not what you want. Too many dentists try to dictate what they want. You have to be savvy to where the market is, and you must communicate a consistent message to the right people and be empathetic to what the consumer is experiencing in the current economy. And I'm going to tell you a good story about that. So the American Dental Association created a study. This was in 2013, critical trends affecting the future of dentistry. And these were the take-home points. The population is getting older, more diverse, leading to different disease patterns, caregiving behavior and ability to pay. Consumers are becoming more astute purchasers of healthcare and seeking value for their spending. I need to stop right there and share with you something that happened yesterday. I always like my presentations to be current. So I get a copy of all the internet leads that come through our website because I want to know, basically what types of inquiries we're getting in the practices that I manage. This is an email from a patient, a random person making an inquiry. I'm interested in getting a root canal done with ozone therapy using sweeps, photoacoustic, endodontic laser. I am very cautious about getting a normal root canal. This to me is astounding. You would never see a consumer 3 or 4 years ago with that level of knowledge making a random inquiry on a dentist website. Maybe it's a combination of Dr. Google, or I don't know what it is, but what you need to know is that consumers are becoming astute and sophisticated. And I tell people when it comes to wellness, there are more patients looking for a wellness-oriented dentist like this person. They understood. They were looking for someone that was using a Photona laser. Okay, how specific do you want to be? The sweeps, photoacoustic endo. And there are more people looking for the dentist than there are dentists to service this population of patients. And this, I see this on a consistent basis. So an increasing number of dentists are being trained, but mounting debt and changing demographics are altering practice choices. Young dentists are having to participate in the corporate environment for those reasons. Pressures are growing for an expanded dental team to provide preventive and restorative services. These are expanded oral therapists. We're starting to see some in the United States, expanded duty assistants. And care is being integrated within patient-centered medical homes in medicine, but inclusion in dental services has been slow. The conclusion is, given the link between oral health and overall health, there is much promise for integrating dental services into overall health services. Okay, I'm going to quickly describe 4 eras of modern dentistry. Era number 1 were the 40s, 50s, and 60s. It's very much problem focused. Patients went to the dentist when they had a problem and they were in pain. That's very, very straightforward. This was a very interesting time. It was actually driven by one individual. The late 60s and 70s, Dr. Bob Barkley, he was an amazing preventive-oriented dentist and had a philosophy of comprehensive care that focused on diagnosis, prevention, education, and relationship building. Unfortunately, Dr. Barkley was killed tragically in a plane crash, and within 1 year, he had like 10,000. He would have 10,000 people in his organization, and his organization folded up within a year after he passed away. So it was very, very much centered on him, which was unfortunate. And people were beginning to get the message that you needed to have your teeth cleaned on a regular basis in order to be healthy. And this is a quote from my second book on practice management. Complete dentistry is giving the patient the opportunity to do all of the work that you have diagnosed at their own pace within their financial and psychological comfort zone, even if it takes years to accomplish. This is what corporate dentistry cannot do. They cannot give the person to have the time to be comfortable within their financial and psychological limits, because they have monetary goals and they have things that they have to get accomplished. Now let's look at the golden age of dentistry. 1988 to 2008, it's where technology met demographic. The focus was on aesthetics. Composites is how you say composite in Australia. I've learned that word. The evolution of composites, veneers, and the demographic was 45-year-old people. They were determined to look good for an entire variety of reasons. There was a tremendous amount of money in circulation. There's money in circulation right now, but I call it funny money. It's a different kind of time. This was a very prosperous time, and cosmetic training exploded. And so the brand names in America were Drs. Dickerson, Rosenthal, and Hornbrook. And I put this tsunami wave to show that these baby boomers, it was a very, very large demographic and population of people. And this was the month that came to an end, September of 2008. And that was when the stock market crashed. And this was a very, very severe financial crisis for America. Now, 2009, I start a job at a new university, and this was my first lecture. And it was in practice management. And I was new to the scene, and people were kind of wondering who I was. They knew I'd had a successful practice, and dentists were going bankrupt. And it was just an awful time financially. And this was one of the slides, and this is a really defining slide for me. And I described the ultimate practice as the biological health oriented dental practice, the largest emerging market opportunity in history. And I looked out at the audience, and it was just blank stares. There wasn't one individual that had any idea of what I was talking about. So it's probably taken a decade for me to kind of tell this story. And fortunately, I met Sue, who has embraced this totally. And now we're going to take this to another level. So era number 4 is this. It's the shift from aesthetics to health and wellness. The 4th generation patient wants a dentist who will listen and work with them and not just on them. And this same tsunami of people that were 45 20 years ago are now 65. So what are the concerns of the 10,000 people a day in America turning 65? Number 1, it's brain health. If you've ever been touched by anybody in your family with dementia or Alzheimer's, it's a life-altering thing, and it's something to be feared. I have experienced that with my mother, and it was awful. Event health, heart attack and stroke. And I'm going to talk about heart attack prevention here in just a minute. And mobility, we've got our knees giving out, our hips giving out, all kinds of problems there. That's the concern today. So where do they spend their dollars? Anything anti-aging, anything, right? Hormones, anything related to mobility and brain health. And these are not covered by insurance, okay? We don't have to worry about what we call PPOs in America. So what do boomers want? Quality of life solutions, and where does the dentist fit? So here's the opportunity that I'm going to describe for you. The opportunity is to address the connection of what's going on in my mouth and how it relates to your overall health. Identifying risk factors. I want you to be comfortable with risk assessment and diagnose and treating disease in the early stages, not with the notched metal stick where you're looking at stuff that's been going on for a decade or two. And you provide your patients with an individual plan that meets them exactly where they are. So the language of era 4 is changing. It's biofilm, it's bacterial load, it's oral disinfection. The conversation must change between removing the stuff on your teeth to the bacterial environment in your mouth and the consequences to your overall health. So I always go back to this slide. I love that slide from 2009. So 3 years after 2009, there's a new organization, the American Academy of Oral Systemic Health, and it looked interesting. And I went to Las Vegas to see this, and I meet Dr. Brad Bale and Dr. Amy Doneen. They're the authors of The Heart Attack Gene. If you have never seen that book, go to Amazon and get it. It has changed a lot of careers. And to me, it was a light bulb moment. I knew that I had to go back and change things. I went to the preceptorship. It was mainly a physician oriented, but I wanted to do the deep dive. And I also became a patient of Dr. Bales. And so this is the crux of their method. Periodontal disease is an independent predictor of cardiovascular risk. Patients with cardiovascular disease should have regular visits with a hygienist and a dentist. And if there is a puzzling inflammatory level, consider oral disease. I'm going to show you that in a minute. Periodontal disease improves glycemic control. That's a well-known fact, and it reduces risk of stroke, periodontal wellness. So this is the Bale-Donine method in its theory. This is the root causes of inflammation. There are 3 dental contributors: periodontal disease, sleep apnea, and unresolved endodontic lesions. That's why I love the Fotona laser so much, because I think it's a state of the art in really trying to prevent recurring endodontic infections. And so when I came back from the preceptorship, I said, I'm going to go back and I'm going to tackle this 1/3 that no one knows anything about, the business of dental hygiene, and let's see if we can do a better job. So this is dental hygiene. It's either powered by a motor scooter or a SpaceX rocket or something in between. These are your 40-inch rows right here. These are people who just refuse to move. All they do is complain about their dental hygiene program. They're not making money. It's a lost leader, blah, blah, blah. And then these are the 5%. These are the people that knew that if we narrowed our rows, we could double and triple our yield, okay? And they have incredible practices. I've had an incredible clinical practice. And right now I'm coaching young individuals to have the same thing. So we need to shift from clinical findings to biological diagnosis, from clinical hard sell to biological show and tell. Okay, that's why the Larkin method, the Larkin protocol, really falls under interpersonal skills and not so much a clinical technique. I want you to know that this is about education and awareness and getting patients involved in their own personal wellness journey. And so that's what the Larkin protocol has come to be called. And this is what it is. It's the use of a chair-side microscope that I've designed to be non-intimidating. There's no eyepieces. I don't want you to be intimidated. And that's a spirochete that we're looking at. It takes a minute to take this sample. This is a parasite. This is an amoeba. You have patients in your practice with these that you see every day. You can't diagnose this with the notch metal stick, but these are very bad for your overall health. And when people see this, they become engaged in the fact that you're doing something very different that is in their best interest. So this is a little bit of the microbiology of what we look at. Just a small group of things. I don't want people to be intimidated by this. And we do what's called risk assessment, okay? And you go from a low risk environment to a high risk environment. And the high risk environment, once you get into any type of bleeding, you have a communication into the bloodstream, and then you have the arterial component of inflammation. Now, we take that one step further, and in the States, we can do biofilm PCR testing, where we can identify the exact pathogens. And once we have the pathogens, this is well established that these periodontal pathogens are involved with these systemic diseases. This is a very important message that our patients need to know about. I'm going to go over 2 brief studies that people don't even know exist. This is the American Heart Association. Essentially what this is patients in periodontal care. This is the reversal of heart disease. And I have a longer presentation where I show my carotid ultrasounds and what's happened over time using the Bale-Donine method. And this is an article that talks about periodontal treatment reducing L-plaque2, which are inflammatory biomarkers. There are hundreds of articles, okay? For the dentist that doesn't, that's doing the 40-inch rows, once you know this, you can't unknow this. There is tons and tons of research to back up all of this. So what are Boomans looking for today? Quality of life solutions. And my question to you is, where do you fit where do you fit with your practice? So Sue and I have launched Hygiene Hackers on Facebook, and what is pending is Hygiene Hackers Workplace, which should be next month. Workplace is a Facebook product, but as you can see, it's much more sophisticated. We're going to have individual classrooms, and we are taking on this 1/3 component of the practice of dentistry that just bewilders the majority of dentists. And we're going to break it down into its smallest components. And we're going to have faculty and classrooms and an unbelievable number of resources in here for you to learn at your own pace and convenience. Get your team involved. I'm really, really looking forward to this. This is going to be a really defining moment for this. And then lastly, for anybody that's attending tonight, I have a new ebook, and it's called Dentistry That Changes Lives, that describes a little bit about my journey the last 2 or 3 years, some of the practices that I've worked with, and we'll get your email and we'll send you out the PDF. This will also be in the Facebook groups and stuff available there. So I hope you've enjoyed that brief overview, but I just wanted to I wanted to challenge you. Okay, the first thing I really love challenging young dentists to think a little bit outside the box. I've been an outlier from the very, very beginning. And so I hope you've enjoyed this. And like I said, it's been an honor to participate and to kind of kick off this forum.
Thank you, Dr. Tom. This is really eye-opening, and it is a wonderful explanation of the whole history of the dentistry and really thinking outside the box, thinking ahead for sure. If you I can see a number of the viewers again, the attendees are joining now. Please stick around to the end, and obviously, as Tom mentioned, please join his Hygiene Hackers Facebook group to contact with Tom. And I hope obviously time difference. I hope Tom will join to the Q&A session as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Tom, once again. Great to have you today.
Thank you.
Beautiful. All right. I hope you would have enjoyed the session. Now let's move to our second speaker. Our second speaker here is Dr. Michael Cernick, who is the dental communication guru, the founder of Channel D. So a little bit about Michael. There are many dentists in Australia that are international superstars, but our next speaker is known internationally as the dental communication guru. And I'm sure many of you have attended his workshops, and he have created a Channel D, which is now used by dentists around the world. But he's not going to talk about Channel D today. Instead, he will explain a new system that he has been working on for over a year now. Yes, obviously in a COVID time, and you'll be hearing about it for the first time, and it's a brand new. So feel free to write and get the notes. And he was not sharing about any on the screen, but just obviously everything he would be delivering. So we are very interested to learn about his new ventures. So all the way, thank you. I'll connect to Dr. Michael Cernick.
Hi, I'm Sue Ruslan, and I'm here with my very dear friend and colleague, Dr. Michael Cernick. Michael, I would like to hear from you about your experience in dentistry, because I know if I do it, I'll get that wrong. But you're mostly known for communications in dentistry. How did that begin?
I think it began the moment I graduated. I went to a practice and I was very excited, thinking that I was going to be doing all this exotic dentistry. Mm-hmm. And very quickly I saw that patients just weren't wanting what I thought they needed. And having just been in the dental hospital as a student, I had no concept that the patient actually had any say in it, because I thought this is what you need and you just tell them that's what you need. I then went to the UK from Australia, and I was there for 6 years. And what I did there was, first of all, I learnt to do a lot of very complex clinical dentistry, because I got myself into, first of all, I went to a practice in London that had opera music and chandeliers, and it was very high class private practice. And once again, I could see even with those people, they weren't just automatically doing the treatment that I thought they needed. And I started to realise what I needed to do was get the patient to want the treatment that they need, and I didn't know how to do it. And
can I just ask a question? you've been in dentistry now for
Don't say.
more than 4 decades, possibly 5,
Exactly.
and you've owned as many practices. So there's a lot of experience coming through with this. So you're saying you went to the UK and
Well, first of all, I went to the UK and I was sort of young and, well, obviously I had just graduated, and I was doing intravenous anaesthetic. It wasn't sedation. You could have taken kidneys out. And so I was doing that, and I was also intubating patients, you know, like proper real anaesthetics, because I was doing that in a hospital. In those days, there was sort of this grandfather clause for dentistry that they can do anaesthetics.
right,
And so I found myself doing that. And because of that, and because in those days there was such appalling sort of level of dental care in the UK with all the national health background and everything else, that I found myself doing very complex dentistry, particularly surgery, but also crown and bridge work. I was doing implants. There was just a wide range of treatment that I was doing, which exposed me to, well, I guess, complex dentistry, and I did that for a long time. The other thing that happened was, because I was doing this anaesthetic and intravenous dentistry, I had to work with more team members than you wouldn't just have one person, because it was dangerous. So I was always doing 6-handed dentistry. I wasn't doing any hygiene. I had multiple hygienists working for me. So I was getting very, very efficient in my time and motion. In those days, patients were lying down for the first time, and we were really focused on doing efficient dentistry. So my mind was going to complex dentistry, very efficient, and really understanding that you need to get the patients to want the treatment. So that was sort of this big soup of knowledge that when I came back to Australia, I then bought a practice in North Sydney, which was a commercial area, and it turned into a crown and bridge practice, and I had referrals coming to me. And I started to realise that it was hard to grow the practice because, well, first of all, there was no advertising, there was no internet, you couldn't do anything more than put a sign up that was out of brass. It was the size of 2 iPhones next to each other, and that was it. And to grow a practice with zero marketing was quite hard. And so another component came into my mind, that I need to get patients to promote me.
right,
So what I came upon was the idea of having the patients do viral marketing. I needed to give them information for them to tell their friends. So I started to think strategically along those lines, which led me to doing things like buying fancy and interesting pieces of equipment, doing biofeedback. See, what happens is when you're doing patients who are always asleep or anaesthetised, as they were in the UK, and then you start working on patients with local anaesthetic, and you've got the patients doing this sort of thing. That was giving me a heart attack. I couldn't stand having nervous patients. I wasn't used to it. I was used to having a completely, like asleep patient. So I was using biofeedback to get them to relax.
right,
And that was great, because patients would then come to the dentist nervous and leave not nervous, tell their friends how wonderful I was. And that was one piece of equipment that I learnt to use that was very, very useful. Frankly, I was more concerned about me than them at that point, because I couldn't stand the tension. But the other thing I started to realise, what I needed to give them a really good vision of what was going on in their mouth. And in those days, all we could do was hold up a mirror or take a photo, but then you'd have to give it to the chemist and get the photo back in 2 weeks' time or something. So it was very inefficient to use cameras, because you couldn't get an instant message. So what I did was I bought an endoscope from North Shore Hospital, and they were selling those things, which is fundamentally a camera, and I had to put a big TV on the screen, on the ceiling. Now, I had a ceiling similar to this one here, which is sort of an office ceiling that couldn't take any weight. I had to construct engineering. The TV was not like today's little TVs. It was like a refrigerator. It was a big, heavy thing on the ceiling.
I think I've got one still.
So I was able to put that in the mouth, and the patients could see themselves. So not only did that give them something viral to talk about, but it actually really helped a lot, because the patient could see what was going on. Now, okay, so all of these types of things, and getting the second laser in the country that I used, being one of the very first dentists to computerise my practice, I was using equipment not just for the use of it, but actually for the viral marketing part of it.
Right.
So, that helped a lot.
So what I'm hearing is it's really important that you talk about those services and not just have them, but constantly, I guess, mention them to your patients, and so that they can then tell others. And this is all where it boils down to your communication skills.
Correct.
So what is it that's different about how you communicated with your patients and how that helped grow your practice?
Well, when I first really recognized that my obstacle in growth was to get the patients to want the treatment that I wanted to do, and I was very ambitious about that. I remember when at dental school, I was the first one to do a bridge and stuff like that. So I was very keen on doing that sort of work, and yet the patients wouldn't do it. And I realized that the problem was that people were trying to get patients to do the treatment by selling it to them.
Yeah.
In other words, I saw courses were how to get your patients to say yes. Now, at first I thought that sounds good, but then after a while I realized that's exactly the wrong thing to do. And in fact, anybody doing a course that says how to get your patients to say yes, be very clear, you are doing a sales course.
Yep.
You're trying to get a yes, you'll sometimes get a no, and when you get a no, that's a black mark against you, because the patients are saying, I don't want to do what you're telling me to do. I can feel that you're selling me something, and now I'm resisting it. And so counterintuitively, I fell into a process whereby I noticed that when I was almost telling a patient, look, you don't need to do this, and sort of backing off and reversing, the patient became more open to it.
Right.
And they started to talk me into it. Now that sort of set up a little germ of understanding in my mind that what I needed to do was figure out a way to get the patient to talk me into the treatment.
Right.
Very counterintuitive. Nobody was talking about anything like this.
Yeah, and very anti-sales.
Very anti-sales. And that was the key component of my communications technique. I was not selling, I was getting the patient to tell me what I had wanted to tell them.
Yeah.
And the way to do it, frankly, is to take a good photo and have a little discussion and get them to discover what's going on.
Now, Michael, I want you to take us from the journey from the 5 practices to your next part of your life, where I know we've had a conversation about this before, where you've been involved in so many new patient exams because you haven't been a dentist. Now, I want you to explain that.
Right. So it's really interesting. I mean, in my mid-40s, frankly, I got to the point where I thought I've done every little bit of dentistry. It's just like I'm in repetition mode. Groundhog Day was dentistry for me. And so I got to the point where I thought, is there more to life than just doing this? Now, I put a caveat on that. Today, dentistry is so exciting and new, I wouldn't have had those thoughts. So I'm not saying to everybody quit dentistry. But back then, it was just before things were getting very exciting. And I was finding myself just doing repetitious work. So in my mid-40s, I decided, you know what, I'm going to have a midlife retirement. It wasn't a crisis because I wasn't unhappy doing dentistry, but I just wanted to experience more than what I had been experiencing. So anyway, I'm forgetting your question, but I think...
So my question was,
it's all
all
right.
of the new patient exams, because I know that you've done more new patient exams than anyone.
That's right. So there's the odd thing. Here I am having quit clinical dentistry in my mid-40s, and now like 30 years later, I've now done more exams than anybody on the planet.
Yep.
And the reason for that is that I started running a communications program, and part of that was a 2-day course. And that course, the 2 dentists, there was like 100 dentists in the room, but each of them came, and the instructions were, bring us your complex cases, particularly complex cases that you've experienced from a communications point of view. Right. Bring those. When I say bring them, not the patient, but bring the x-rays, bring the model, and bring the charts, and then swap with somebody else. Use the communication skills that I've talked about for the last 3 days, which led to these 2 days of communications training. And it was a master's class, we called it. So I've done thousands of dentists where they'd sit together and I'd be amongst them all and see what's going on. Then we'd do a debrief. And it was a bit like speed dating. Imagine if you were a speed dating coach and you spent 20 years speed dating every day with people. How many dates? You'd be very good at it.
You'd have a harem.
Yeah, you'd have a harem. So I frankly developed a skill around the new patient exam because I just did so much of it, and I was just targeted on that. But also I had the clinical experience to understand that what you say was very clinically dependent. It wasn't sort of just like generic talking. in other words, a coach who does this and doesn't understand the clinical cannot possibly do it correctly because they're sort of just using generalities. This was very treatment specific, but it also involved communication skills. So it was a sort of an unusual mix, and that's why I mentioned my history in the UK and all this other stuff, because I already had a pretty solid clinical experience, plus I had a very solid communications experience, and over the years, having developed a course around this, it just gave me the credentials to be able to do this from years and years of doing exams.
And now you've got Cernic Speak, which is a newer way of doing things. So you've taken all of that experience from all of that training that you've done and now turned it into another program. Can you explain that? Can you explain it to me?
Yes.
And also please explain why it's different to the things that you've done in the past.
Very good. My original communications program, which I frankly sold off when I left the practice management company, so it's unfair for me to talk about it, other than the content of that course was really from last century, because it was when I was a dentist.
Yep.
What then happened was now there's so many more things to talk about because technology has moved along, that I've come up with more content, more communications content that's more relevant to today's dentistry. But it's still based on the principles of getting the patient to talk the dentist into the treatment. But beyond that, the other thing that's different is the original course was just for dentists. It wasn't for team members, because when I practiced, really the nurse didn't do much. Basically, she supported things. It was usually a woman, but they weren't actually communicating to the patients. That's changed a lot, to the point where I would say that really what you want is a team member to be communicating more to the patient than the dentist. That's quite different than before.
Yep.
And it's much, much more efficient. A dentist, if you actually do a stopwatch and measure how much time are they actually talking and how much time is a suction on and they're working, it's about 50%. So 50% talking. If you could take that 50%, let's say it's an 8-hour day. So you've got an 8-hour day, 50% of that is 4 hours of talking. So let's say the team members just do 2 hours of talking, which they can, particularly in the new patient exam, because you can have team members do almost everything, and instead of an hour exam taken up by the dentist time, it could be literally 10 minutes of the dentist time when they just literally do the clinical part of looking, etc. And then you've got the team members handling all the rest. That saves a tremendous amount of time. So there's this huge time saving there, but you need now training to be able to have those team members to be able to know what to say. Otherwise, what are they talking about? Have I answered that part of it?
Yeah, I think so.
I might have gone off track.
No, we always go off track because there is so much to talk about. So we've got...
Oh yeah, you asked me what's unique.
Correct.
I think so, right.
Yes.
Okay, so the unique part is we've increased the content and made it more applicable to team members. But the biggest part, I think, actually is what I'm calling Cernic's system, which is not the communications part, but which is the training component.
Yes.
So I should explain that briefly.
And before you do, I know that your old training, you used to have to take 3 days out of practice to go and do it, right?
Correct.
And then people would...
It became 3 and 5, in fact, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So this is an online training, so people can do it in their own time.
Right.
Is that right?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Okay, so the problem with all training, and if you look up Professor Ebbinghaus, E-B-B-H-A-U-S-E, Professor, he had a thing called the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve.
Right.
And it's been studied at universities, etc., that they, from a memory point of view, people forget content. We all know that. But you'll go to a course, you'll get 100 pieces of information and you remember 5 after 30 days. That's sort of fairly typical. So 95% of content gets forgotten. And it's obvious because when I was doing these courses, people would have to repeat them. They often, I know of practices that did my course 8 times.
Right.
Because they'd come again and again. I think of one practice that moved, they were going to Las Vegas from Savannah, Georgia, 8 times with the whole team. And that was, I thought, isn't that wonderful? But actually it's not wonderful. It means they're not remembering stuff. So the question is, how do you get people to not forget? Okay? How do you do it so that they just come once if it's a live course, or attend it once if it's an online course, because that information needs to be sort of repeated in some form to stop the forgetting process. Okay.
Right. So we've got two components here. We've got how you're delivering it and how people are remembering it, and also the content.
The content.
Right. Okay.
Correct. So let's just talk now about that first thing that you mentioned, which is how do we structure a training course so people don't forget?
Right.
And I thought about this a lot because honestly, I didn't want to just create all this new content and then find that people still were forgetting it. Okay. So it's so important to me. Anyway, so the way it works is, let's say that I've created 5 modules. Now, the first module is sort of a generic-y module that shows how the system that has a whole bunch of videos in it. We've got another one which is for the front office, if you like, which is answering the phone and accepting the patient when they arrive. The third one is all about the new patient exam, which used to be my full course, but now, as you can see, I've expanded it. The fourth one is practice systems and the best systems to use and why. And then the fifth one is advanced communication skills. Right. Okay, so there's the module. In each of these 5 modules, there's videos, and altogether so far I have 88 videos. So it's a lot of content there.
Yeah.
Now, the way it works, each team member is tracked. That's the first thing that's very important, because if you track just the whole practice can watch a video, but then if they're going to want to see it again, half the team are yawning because they know it already. The other half are confused because they didn't remember it from before. So we're sort of, the more it's repeated, the more irrelevant and inefficient it is, because we need to be individualizing it, is my point. It's okay that everybody looks at something together if they want to or not, but as soon as they've done that, from there on, it needs to be individualized, if that's a word. Which means now, let's say there's a break in the day and you've got 5 minutes free. Maybe that's an exaggeration. Let's say you've got 15 minutes free. And a team member they go to the computer and they watch a 5-minute video in their 15-minute time. As soon as that video is over, the system tells them by text to that person's phone to have a look at the Cernic Speak app. Yep. And on that app is a series of questions just about that video. But it's not a long process, because what happens is they will have a question and the answer is blanked out, and it might have 8 letters blank. There may be 1 letter there that's a hint or something, just so that we're not getting a different word. And they'll answer that question either correctly or incorrectly. And there may be 4 or 5 questions about that topic that they just watched. Right. The system now immediately knows, is it correct or not, gives them immediate feedback. So we're not just testing them, but now we're actually refreshing their memory about something that they might have forgotten, and they only just watched the video 2 minutes ago. Chances are they'll get all that right, because their memory is high at that level. But 2 days later, they get exactly the same question. It's like a text comes up, and then they go to the app and they answer the question. Each question probably takes no more than 10 seconds to put in, so it's very quick and it's done. But now the system has just reinforced that information. 5 days later, they get it again, and 28 days later, they get it again, and 6 months later, they get it again.
So this is Professor Ebbinghouse's work that you've combined with your training.
Correct.
Right. So that's how you've taken the old visit a seminar for a day into something that people will remember and not have to revisit constantly.
Correct.
Right.
And you don't have to, and because the practice manager gets a report for every team member, you might have 30 team members. Now, how are you going to manage that? One's new, one didn't come, whatever. But they can all get in there. Each one is being tracked by the system, so the IT is doing the magic. And they can see a report, they can see this person hasn't looked at anything for 2 weeks, they need to do something.
Yep.
And these others are doing really well, but you can see everybody's level of expertise. And if somebody is answering a question that they haven't touched on for 30 days or so, and they get it right, we know from Ebbinghaus that's long-term memory. Yep. They've locked it in. Fine, now we can see what people know, and over lots and lots of people, no limits to the number of people. The system's managing all this learning. So what is that doing? It means that we don't have to shut the practice down, right? It means we are just targeting the information that's lost. We are having the right teams working in the right areas for them.
Yeah.
So it just handles so much. I think it's very useful.
I really love how the whole team's involved, because I know when I was training in dentistry, as a 20-year-old, I had to really stick my elbows out to kind of wedge myself into any dentist training. I wanted to know. I really I'm just so curious about those things. But the dentist knew everything and we knew nothing. But this is incorporating the whole team, and I love how you're doing that.
Well, and the good thing also is that even though there's a priority for the front office to do the front office thing, they actually can go, and I suggest they go ahead and do everything else.
Right.
And the other part of this is just one extra piece, is that if you've got particular standard operating procedures and systems and protocols that you would like to include into this system so that everybody knows how to function.
Yep.
Your practice might have, this is how we close the practice, or this is how you take a credit card, or whatever the hell, whatever it is,
you
can put that into the system, and now everybody can be learning that as well. So now it's so comprehensive. It's got every little bit of smart stuff that I might have picked up over the years,
plus
everything that's their own stuff. And you don't have to be a training manager trying to figure all this out, because the system does it for you.
That's fantastic. Michael, is there anything you want to add? I know there is a question that you and I get asked a lot about, do I buy a second practice? Is that something you can just touch on now? I know that's a very simple question, but...
No, it's a good question, because it's so common these days that people run around and buy practices. Corporates do it all the time. And the thing is that if you can nail one practice and really get everything working so well, to the point that you've now got a group starting at 7 and finishing at 1, and another group comes in at 1 and they finish at 8 or 9 or whatever, you've really maximised that practice. It's got great systems and protocols. Everybody's happy. Everything's working well. You've got great team retention. And now you want to buy another practice. Now you can, because you can duplicate that, because it's not all on you.
But not before.
But not before, because then you are duplicating inefficiencies.
Right.
And in fact, the second practice is always worse than the first one. If the first one was dependent on one person who's the key, leader type of thing, sitting there doing stuff, and now you think you can just duplicate that, it doesn't work that way.
And it's very difficult to duplicate the culture, right? That's the other big mistake, isn't it?
Correct. So this does it all. And, one could say, well, we like team training because everyone gets together. Well, with this you can. It's just like if we were all watching a video, we all log in, but everybody is still seeing the same thing. So we can still do the team training things to be able to get that sort of dynamic. But then all that supporting and all that revisiting is handled. Instead of going to a training, turning off the practice, costing so much money, doing something and then forgetting 95%, which has been the world of training generally.
Yeah.
So to me, this is a complete shift, and it opens up the possibilities like nothing ever before. So I'm excited, obviously.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I'm really pleased that you've created Cernix Speak, and I love your idea around, the delivery, because there have been a lot of friction points in practices before where delivering training to everyone has been bothersome, because they've had to close down the practice. People don't remember. They have to reattend. They're not hearing all the same message because people are going to different courses. So I can't wait to race off now and get my clients to put Cernix Speak in their practice. Thank you for having a chat with me today. Is there anything you'd like to add, or?
The only thing I could add is that if people do your course as well,
very
which
sweet.
is regarding hygienists, and look into that,
Yep.
There's no question that if they do both of these systems, they'll be skyrocketing.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know what I do, I'll send you to a link at some point where you can talk about that. Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone for spending this time listening, and we'll sign off.
Thank you. Okay. Thanks, Sue.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. That was really amazing. We are so honored to have you today and obviously share your story and a new program, Cernix Speak. Obviously, I have also sent the link to you, sirnickspeak.com, yes, .com. It's all about the new content, new insights, and new techniques. So if you're watching this right now, you're a practice owner, dentist, dental or hygienist, or you are in a front line, please check it out. Definitely everything is to do with the communication. And that's what Michael is all about. All right. So I hope you are enjoying so far. So now our third speaker on the line is Zone, Dr. Zone Heglessis. A little bit about Zone. Dr. Zone Heglessis is graduated from the University of Melbourne with a Bachelor of Dentistry in 1998. Dr. Zone founded a South Melbourne-based dental clinic in 2011, which quickly listed on BRW's Fast 100 businesses in Australia, and for years in 2011 and 2012. So he's the largest provider of Philips Zoom, yes, Philips Zoom, and whitening treatment in Australasia since 2012, and one of the largest Invisalign providers in Asia since 2014. He's the founder of non-profit society called Australasian Clear Aligner Society, ACAS, which I'm sure many of you are aware of it, in 2018, and Aorta. So Dr. Zone absolutely loves technology. He's, I was in ADX and listening about his and noting the points down. It was amazing to know about what he's doing and how he's helping, transforming the clinics as we speak, and loves finding to incorporate it into his practice and many others to make him more accurate and efficient. So I will share my screen here, and obviously you can see it. And Dr. Zone will be joining live with us very soon as well in Q&A. So here we go.
Hi, my name is Dr. John Heglessis. Welcome to my presentation on behalf of How to Grow Your Practice Faster, with this amazing lineup of speakers with Prabin, Susan, Dr. Michael and Dr. Tom Larkin, talking about how we can improve your efficiency and maximize the effectiveness of your practices. So it's a pleasure, and thank you for the invitation to speak to you about this concept of introducing team dentistry with clear aligners. So what we're going to go through in this presentation is how to increase aligner treatments and maximize efficiencies at your general dental practices. It's really knowing why and how you're going to do it and what you're going to need. Now, I'm sure you've all seen
What's a smile shop?
this.
Well, it's where smiles are made. We're a smile guy.
It's a transformational evolution in dentistry where we have direct-to-consumer aligner manufacturers now entering our space, and many of us can look at it as a negative. I see it as a positive. It's the first time in our history that someone is spending millions in marketing on a weekly basis in this country, showcasing what we do, but we can do it better. And I guess I'm going to also share with you how clear aligners changed my dental career and my life. And share that journey, which will hopefully inspire you to embrace change and clear aligners. So those that don't know me, I've been in practice for over 20 years. I was passionate about transforming the way dentistry was done. I didn't like the way it was done when I graduated in 98, and really wanted to put the patient and the customer service, the patient experience at forefront and improve that process. And it's taken me on one hell of a journey. You meet amazing people, amazing patients. But we've been doing clear aligners before it became popular, since over a decade ago, where we're doing more than 350 cases year on year, over 4,000 cases, one of the largest providers of Invisalign, not just in Australia, but in Asia, use multiple systems, including in-house aligners. We were the first to have an iTero scanner in Australia in 2010 before Align bought them out. Recognised as BRWs, or Business Review Weekly's fastest 100 businesses. Not dental practices, but businesses in Australia, where we were growing at 40% year on year on the one site in 6 years consecutively. And that wasn't just because we did aligners, but it was based on innovating the patient experience. But I think it's important when you think of clear aligners, you think of the patient's perspective, and aesthetic orthodontics and the patient experience is about creating an emotional connection. And once the patient sees, they believe, and once they believe, they want it. And technology is enabling that. I also founded Aorta, Aesthetic Orthodontic and Restorative Training Academy, which I'm going to share with you some of those key points of our pillars of communication technology and systems. And I'll sort of share with you those three main pillars today. So let's start off with wide clear aligners. First, I really need you to open your eyes and embrace change. For those that don't know, that's not the world's first camera or even Dr. Mike Senek's first camera, but it's a camera that was designed called the Mammoth camera on the turn of the last century, 1899, because the guy who owned this train wanted to showcase his train at the World Fair in 1901, and he built the world's first panoramic camera, the Mammoth camera, that weighed half a ton, involved 20 men to build, so he could have that photo to showcase how long his train was. Now, if it wasn't for innovation like this and the likes of people like Steve Jobs, who were crazy enough to see that we could make a difference in the world, then that phone or that photographer wouldn't have innovated in this amazing technology, which many of you may be watching this presentation on. So as professionals, as clinicians, we need to start thinking in the same mindset of going with the flow and ensuring that we stay relevant to our patients in this modern world that's changing on a daily basis. So let me share with you about how clear align has transformed my practice and this proactive mentality. I bought a practice, 2 chairs, 2 dentists, 4 days a week, hungry to transform my patient experience philosophy. I introduced clear aligners about 15, 16 years ago. We quickly expanded, got the first scanner, and then technology and this patient's wants versus needs philosophy transformed the way we do dentistry. And it's been one crazy ride. And we were doing aligners well before it had, excuse me, really impacted the globe as it does now. And the systemization with dentistry with clear aligners has really taken us on one amazing ride. Now, many of you who just start off with aligners, confidence, clinical confidence is really what's lacking. And I've been there and done that. And if you look at the journey of how many aligner cases we started year on year, the big jump in 2011 was when we got our first iTero scanner in 2010. But in 2011, iTero got bought out by Invisalign. And we were then one of the first practices in the world uploading data directly to the third-party aligner company, Invisalign, and getting results back within hours. And then we doubled our numbers again when we got our second scanner. And it's been one crazy ride ever since, implementing more systems and more aligners. But what was curious is once we started doing clear aligners, we started to notice that other modalities of dentistry increased. Once you showed a patient what they wanted, they were more open to what they needed. Crown and bridge, implants, oral surgery. And the reality is we know from research from the US, if you tell a patient they need 6 fillings, a root canal, perio, whatever it might be, 1 in 3 proceed. But if you show a patient what they want, as these statistics show, they're more open to what they need because they're visualizing what they want, and that emotional connection is created. And if you look at the turnover, you know, when I took over the whole practice, it was under 2 mil. And then once we incorporated aligners, everything jumped, including our revenue reliance on aligners was within 4 years over that 2 million mark. But it wasn't just about technology and saying we do aligners. It was really focusing on this patient wants versus needs philosophy. I'm going to share with you some of those light bulb moments that happened in my career. The first one is Mrs. Smith. Now, Mrs. Smith comes into me, it's 2003. I just bought into the practice, and I look at the medical form. My receptionist tells me after doing a new patient interview that the patient requires a filling on her 3-6. She's broken a tooth. I have a quick look to see who referred her and a bit about her medical history, and then I noticed she was born in March 1913. So she's 90 years old. She's lived through 2 world wars, and I look back at my reception and say, "Why have you booked a denture repair in my book for a filling?" So I have a look in her mouth, and lo and behold, she has all her dentition, and she's broken her 3-6. I look back in amazement at her and asked her what was her secret. How was it possible? A 90-year-old in 2003, let alone in 2021, still had her dentition. And she looked me in the eyes, still had her faculties with her, and said, "The secret is I didn't listen to my dentist." And that was that light bulbing moment. Because you can imagine in 1930, when she went to in the 1930s, when she went to the dentist for the first time, she was told one thing: best standards in the 1930s in dentistry in this country and in the world was extract all your teeth and full dentures. And that was a revelation. What am I doing in 2003 or now in 2021 that will be considered redundant? We offer our patients what we think is the best care, but ultimately things change, and we need to empower the patient in the journey rather than telling them what they need, and open up to what they want. And that was our revelation, that our dentistry, our oral health care services that we provide need to be looked at differently. As clinicians, we get drilled military style through our university that we graduate from, that all it is about is needs. Where that healthcare professional will tell them what they need. And we really consider little about the psychology and the ability to communicate as to what they want, and try and bring both these things together. But as things evolve, that's how our customer service evolved, in using technology to integrate the patient in their journey and collaborate the wants versus needs by creating that emotional connection. A few years later, the second light bulb moment in my career happened. It's 2009, 2010, and this young lady walks in. She's 16, terrible confidence, can't look me in the eyes. Mum comes in after traveling 2 hours away and says, "Please help my baby. All I want to do is break her jaw and put braces on her, and I don't want that for her." And I look at her, and I'm sure you'd agree, the clinicians watching this, they're right. She needs orthodontic surgery, orthodontist, oral surgeon managing her case. The mum begs and says, "Please, I hear you do clear aligners, and we're desperate. We want to try anything other than that." So I didn't make any promises. I took some impressions and said, "I'll use the software to try and simulate. We might be able to improve things prior to seeing an orthodontist and oral surgeon, but you're going to need conventional treatment." But this kid was motivated, and within 3 years, that's the result we got. Now, we didn't correct the skeletal class 2 tendency. We stabilized the occlusion and optimized their facial aesthetics. And this was that lightning bolt moment. This technology works. This is 10 years ago. The technology, aligners were terrible. They were worse than Smile Direct Club compared to now. But it was a revelation that this technological age is upon us 10 years ago, and it is going to disrupt every aspect of our way of life, let alone our working way of life in dentistry. And if you think about it, dentistry evolved as a solution, a disruptive technology to what was happening in the refined sugars and manufacturing and the industrial revolution with food processing. We became a necessity to resolve the consequences of what refined sugar was doing to people's diets. And as technology got better, our services got better in the second industrial revolution. Many talk about the third industrial revolution being the revolution of connectivity. And this photo was taken by mistake, but we are seeing a transformation in how patients communicate and interact with us. They have the knowledge before they come and see us. And you can imagine this patient took that photo and shared it with her global community and got feedback and assurances and validations whether she should proceed or not, and also from a costing perspective. And we're seeing this throughout every industry on the planet. These brands didn't exist 10, 15 years ago, and they're all virtual, and they all dominate our very existence. And if you look at what's happened 5 years ago when taxi drivers started complaining with the Uber services, it's now redundant. And I challenge you clinicians out there, do you want to be considered the taxi of our industry, our profession, or the Uber progressive? Because it's changing, and it's changing whether we like it or not. Airbnb's done the same, so is Tesla. Closer to home, we're seeing these aligner companies, dental monitoring, AI company that's manufacturing, Angel in that lower right. They're all coming out with ways to interact and create a more positive, transparent, and realistic emotional connection with our patients. This group providing one-day crown or same-day crowns by providing a milling unit for the clinician to prep the crown based on the digital workflow. It's making the patient experience more comfortable, and it's making dentistry, it's dumbing down our profession. Many of you out there, I know, still take PBS impressions, but how many of your patients come in asking the receptionist, "Please give me that extra runny PBS impression. I want to make sure I refund my breakfast before I start the day." Dentistry needs to be more effective. It's a no-brainer. If you haven't got an intraoral scanner, you're missing the boat. This data collected is going to transform every aspect of what we do. If I'm setting up a dental practice today in terms of communication to my third-party aligner company, to my patient, to my team, it's a no-brainer. We haven't developed the capabilities in the software that will help transform our data analysis and collection of our patient records. Patients will be coming in, I foresee in the future, every 6 months for a checkup and clean and a scan, which will cross-reference their previous 6 months and give us a report to evaluate. Little Johnny, who comes in after the 6 monthly checkup and clean, the 7-year-old who then plays footy, chips his front tooth, we're not going to do composites. I don't care how good your composites are, how good your porcelain work is. If we have an STL file, data will be able to copy nature by using the STL file to then print the restoration that looks exactly like nature rather than trying to copy nature. Dentistry is changing. And many of us have been taught Dr. Black's 5 classes of amalgam restorations. But patients don't want that. Those that are unaware, Dr. Black was around when that was going on. How many of you came to work or come to work on your horse and buggy or get your car serviced by a blacksmith? It's redundant dentistry, and our professions are still teaching it. These guys aren't going to go away. Direct-to-consumer models of transforming and disrupting our oral health care, not just with aligners. And this is what beholds us all if we don't change and innovate. And I love this photo because it really shows what dentistry was like. Manual records, free-to-air TV playing rather than a service showcasing what you do. And then when Smile Direct Club ads come on, someone quickly tries to change a channel. Your plaque on a wall, it's changing, and we need to change with it. And if you look at the last 20 years of these major giants that's really control our world, they've changed. There's been a transformation, a changing of the guide, and it's all companies and online technology. And if you think of dentistry, those that lead our world, if they don't continue to innovate, they'll become redundant too. So what we want to now do is, the why. Let's look at how and who and what you need. So we'll go through what you need, who you need, the importance of technology, which you've already said a little bit of, and also potentially how we can systemize our work. So what you need IT, you need computers, you need them everywhere, you need them accessible everywhere for every clinician, non-clinician, receptionist. You need a strong Wi-Fi because a lot of data is being uploaded and downloaded, and you need a scanner. Like I said before, if you are setting up a dental practice, the first thing I look for after the dental chair is a scanner. There are plenty of brands out there, and there are plenty that are coming, and the price is coming down. But the scanner needs to be discussed and considered in your general practice based on whether you want to do restorative and aligners and what brand. Because ultimately they all work, but we're starting to see shifts in the industry where there's closed scanning. So if you want to do Invisalign, you may need Notero or an older version of a Trios, because Prime Scan won't be considered. Medit won't be considered. Then radiology for more efficiency and digitization of the records. If you've got a scanner that creates an STL file, that can be superimposed with the radiology file, with a CBCT scan. So then you're better diagnosing and treatment planning the momentum of teeth being moved, not just from a crown perspective, but from a root perspective. And then photography and videography. I think more and more now we are taking videos of patients talking, interacting to get a more efficient result and diagnosis as we're treatment planning, especially for patients, for example, who have gummy smiles. So important information. You also need to provide a virtual presence online. So patients are coming to you for a reason, whether it's website, slideshows, or a video showcasing what you do, like D-Channel, which Dr. Senning does very well. You need data, information, virtually and print, clear contracts, social media presence, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and who knows what's around the corner. Payment plans, accessibility, convenience for the patient interaction. And you want to have constant exposure. It's about creating emotional connection. You're creating a story of your why and how you do things. So patients are coming because they interact and feel a comfort. Patients make a decision based on emotion, not based on, cold hard facts or just money. So it's an important consideration. And who you need a team to delegate and empower. You need to think of dentistry as a team sport, not as an individual. The team doesn't revolve around the dentist. You need to think of the patient-centric practice. not a dentist-centric practice. So you need each and every one of these team members: the front office, the first impressionist, the meet and greet, the dental assistants that assist us, but also can collect data, photos, intraoral scans, videos, and promote what we do. And the therapist, to me, the key from really leveraging with clear aligners in doing hundreds of cases a year as a general practice is with a therapist who are the personal trainers. They do this amazingly well with oral hygiene instructions. They can do it well in assisting us with attachments and interproximal reduction or IPR, and aligner administering and compliance. And of course, us as the clinicians, we are more the practice managers, the architects, the software developers, software developing of the treatment plans and diagnostic tools. And we can help present the emotional connection to the patients through color, shape, and contour and alignment of their results, and then tell them what they need. So this is really important. People in developing a team around you that can do everything of these aspects and delegate. If you're a clinician still taking photos, that's redundant. That's something that can be outsourced. Do dentistry, do what you can only do. If you're taking payment plans or talking money to the patient, you're becoming redundant and you're not using your time efficiently. And the therapist, it's key to understand they're not diagnosing or treatment planning, they're collating data, they're assisting in providing opportunities like they do in every aspect of dentistry, where Tom and Sue have spoken about the amazing capabilities with technology in showcasing how we can encourage them to take better care of their oral health with the microscope technology. Then we can also do this with clear aligners with the therapists, and they are an integral part of the team. And then of course, us as the clinicians in being able to showcase color, shape, and what they need to balance what they want. Very important. And these are your superstar team: your first impressionists, your data collectors, your personal trainers, and your project managers. But it's important, again, to reiterate, technology is an integral part of this next phase of dentistry and how you can grow your practice quickly and effectively. But understand it provides accuracy, allows you to delegate and systemize, and efficiency. But more importantly, the people who we treat perceive it as superior. We see this when patients look at why they don't go under dental care. Technology underlines and gives our patients confidence in what we can and can't do. Patients perceive what they see, whether we like it or not. You'd rather have the builder using the technology on the right than the left, right? And again, for those that are taking impressions, ask yourself why. Is it for you because you're fearing embracing change in technology, or is it for the patient? There is no patient who wants that impression on the left-hand side unless they're wanting to refund their breakfast on that morning. Period, right? Embrace change, go get a scanner. Plenty of places are trialing it. What's astonishing in the last 5 years, the uptake of scanners in general practice has gone from 10 to 15%. It's crazy. I see it when I do training courses. Clinicians fear change and they refuse to pick up the scanner to try, and it is easy. It will take you minutes to adapt to the technology, to embrace change. And more importantly, perception. Patients see it as perception. Now, I think the other thing with perception is, I'm going to ask you all a question. What do patients perceive your quality control or your customer service and infection control to be judged by? It's not based on QIP or how many courses you've done or how clean your infection control area looks like. They perceive it by the cleanliness of your bathroom. So perception and that visualization is a powerful tool. And again, what technology do you need? Well, I said it already, scanner. You need it and you need it quickly. You need photography for data collection, for case reflection, for diagnostic and treatment planning, and communicating with your third-party aligner company. But for marketing and social media, it's a no-brainer. And of course, medico-legally. And obviously what D-Channel does with using those ability to communicate with patients is also important. And again, SLRs are dead and redundant. Smartphone that can take data quickly and effectively and more efficiently with a smile light becomes the way I do it. I haven't used an SLR camera in private practice since 2015. And then you've got the amazing technology of dental monitoring that helps you track and helps the patient take photos by using a scan box. and you're treating patients virtually. During COVID, when Melbourne was locked down for half the year, I was still treating and monitoring patients effectively and more efficiently than if I'd seen them face to face. And then you've got this amazing technology to interact and get connections through dental monitoring with their smile mate, and of course the emotional connection with dental vision. And this is the sort of technology, this is the sort of results you can achieve and interact with them. That's game changing. When a patient can see their transition and I can keep an eye on complicated cases, it's mind changing, mind blowing. And finally, systemization, which I'll briefly introduce, focusing on dentistry as being, instead of me, but we, and putting the patient first. We need to have a patient-centric philosophy. The most important lesson out of this presentation is put the patient first and not yourself second. And those who are non-dentists watching this presentation know what I'm talking about. I'm probably laughing. The dentist thinks they are the center of the universe in the dental practice. COVID proved otherwise. Without patients, we hadn't got a dental practice. So that philosophy needs to change, and systemization is a great way. And I can spend all day talking about this. This is my favorite topic. But looking at Taylorism, the father of modern management from the Industrial Revolution, really looks at how you can break down and delegate duties. And all these major brands focus on Taylorism and how to delegate. And many of you expect this service. Many of you may have flown ADX last week, and each and every one of you were experiencing Qantas or Virgin's way of doing things. But how many of you requested or chose a pilot? How many of you got on the plane and said, oh no, I'm not going on this plane. Captain Smith is flying this plane? Because we don't. And dentistry is becoming the same. We can outsource and delegate. There's going to be some patients who are going to say, yeah, I want to see this dentist. But with clear aligners, it can be outsourced. Smile Direct Club is showing it. Invisalign's embracing that. Dental monitoring is assisting that. We become a small part of the equation, not the most important part of the equation. And many of you are looking at it going, exactly that. But that's actually the solution. The workflow to freedom, which I'm going to share with you, is the patient experience. And look at how you can delegate it, systemize it, make sure you break it down to the patient inquiry, the education process, the diagnosing and treatment planning, the monitoring, outsourcing with dental monitoring, and then finishing so the patient can refer their family and friends. I go through this in a lot more detail in our master classes. We've got one coming up in Melbourne and all over Australia, fingers crossed, with things and borders resisting. And we provide the dental monitoring services for your practice to be incorporated for those interested in master classes. Now, let's finish up with going through some cases and showing you the power of clear aligners and creating that emotional connection with the facial aesthetic. All of these simulations have been done with clear aligners. There's nothing clear aligners can't do as far as I'm concerned, except if the patient isn't compliant. And it's driven by using simulations before we see them to get these results. And these are cases that are complicated, but are done within 12 to 18 months with optimal facial aesthetically driven results, and done safely and predictably, looking for facial aesthetic balance, non-parabolic arch expansion to provide results that would otherwise not be possible. And these are all cases that have been done using aorta principles and processes in place, and then using multidisciplinary solutions where patients can get the best of both worlds. It's not about preparing the tooth versus aligning the teeth. It's a combination of both. Now, I don't care how good you are with your veneers or DSD, that can't be done with the veneers only. Using aligners first and simulating and using an emotional connection and combining both the digital ortho-restorative philosophy. Now, for those that are aorta students, we provide digital aorta laboratory services. We've created this virtual smile simulator that ensures that a patient has informed consent and understanding those class 2 cases on that left where you can do veneers may be better served by aligning first and then producing a combination of both. And when you show the patient and create an emotional connection, they don't choose one or the other. We're finding in our research and our cases that they do both and embrace the best case scenario that minimally is invasive rather than it's one or the other. And that digitalizing that simulation becomes important. And it's one of the things that we were recognized as an innovation nominee for the ADIA just recently up against multinational companies and providing clear aligner solutions, post-clear aligner solutions for clinicians to better diagnose and treatment plan and provide these sort of resultant solutions by creating the emotional connection before they start. Again, nothing we can't do in minimizing restorative work and optimizing patients' facial aesthetics by combining both orthodontic, prosthodontic, and facial aesthetic situations. Again, the patient about to get married, we broaden her arch with clear aligner. She has peg-shaped laterals, and then we have the option to do restorative, direct, or porcelain. In this case, she had a gum lift and decided on 8 veneers to optimize her facial aesthetics. Now, that can't be done with one modality alone in dentistry. It's a multidisciplinary approach, and digitizing that workflow, delegating it, systemizing it to your practice generates multidisciplinary revenue in not just orthodontics, prosthodontics, and facial aesthetics. And again, most importantly, happier patients. Again, I love this case. It was a patient who was told she was finished with her orthodontist with braces, and there was nothing else they can do but do veneers. She came to us for a second opinion. We used the data to evaluate that the reason why she wasn't happy wasn't just because of the alignment of that tooth, it was because of that composite that was left. So we used IPR and analyzed the width of the teeth and just used IPR on the composite, got rid of it, aligned the teeth better, and got a better facial aesthetic driven result. Rather than just saying we have to cut your teeth, or that's the limits. We use technology to better diagnose. Again, I don't care how good your composites are. Trying to use braces or a veneer to improve that solution when there's a distalized 3. You can use aligners to have a fake tooth in place of that missing tooth as you open up the space. So the patient is never inconvenienced aesthetically, and then put a bonded bridge or an implant. Same with this case, just finished his footy career, was wearing a denture, wanted to optimize his aesthetics, but he wasn't going to accept 2 3-unit bridges or 2 implants and 6 veneers. We used aligners to better diagnose and treatment plan the length-width ratio, the golden proportions. He had a Pontic in place instead of the denture as soon as we started aligning his teeth, and then got a better balance, and then placed 2 implants. Now, that is minimal invasive, but it's giving patients a choice by creating an emotional connection. And then you're not doing one or the other, you're doing both. Again, another case, big smile, lots of spaces, right? Optimizing facial aesthetics easily and effectively with clear aligners. So I hope this has been helpful. Again, nothing you can't do, class 2 corrections, extraction cases, it's all possible with clear aligners. Another case there to finish off with, where we intruded, closed the gaps, and then finished with veneers. And this was a COVID case, gummy smile, only told veneers and a gum lift was the only invasive approach. We used virtual smile simulator, we used aligners to intrude, then a gum lift, and then just some bonding on the incisal edges with just plastic, a digital workflow, and a little bit of soft tissue augmentation. Again, at one of our courses that we run for those introducing clear aligners to their practice, a 1-day course. Love to see you there. Again, thank you for the opportunity, Pravin and team, and look forward to answering questions at the end. Cheers.
So thank you, John. I hope you all have enjoyed this this live from all the way from John, and obviously he would be joining as well shortly in Q&A session. And I can see a number of attendees. If you have any questions, please feel free to just type in on, and definitely we our panelists will bring it along. Now our 4th speakers today is Sue Rosalind, who is a former dental hygienist in past life, obviously clinician and practice management expert. Yes, she's the expert. She's an industry veteran, having clocked up in excess of 35 years working in the dental field. Her business, Talking Dental, is a boutique dental consultancy, coaching, and training business. Sue has created a hygiene hacker where she's raising the profile of dental hygienists. And as you have heard this morning from Professor Dr. Tom Larkin, and is working with Professor Tom Larkin to bring the Larkin Protocol, which is a highly evaluated level of dental healthcare to Australia and the world. So please welcome to my dear friend, Sue Ruslan. And she get an opportunity to sit here in my hot seat. Can you believe it? So I will share, make sure that her screen everything is ready to go. Just give a sec. Yeah, beautiful. All right. So let me welcome Sue. Good day, Sue. Great to have you. Please.
Might need to go a bit lower. Do I need to go lower? Hi, everyone. I hope you're having a great Sunday morning / Saturday night if you're in the USA. And I'm really, really pleased that you've all stuck around and listened to these fantastic speakers. Over my dental career, I've met such amazing people. And one of my skills, which I didn't realize till very late, was I'm a really great professional connector. So all of these gorgeous people that have been talking today have become friends of mine, and they astound me with their knowledge and collective intelligence in the dental world. So one of the things you're actually getting today is a whole bunch of people who have many, many decades of experience in the profession that you're in now. So I do want to thank my gorgeous son for preparing my slides, because as usual, I leave everything to the last minute and I have too much to say. So he's helped me to do this. I want to talk to you about what I feel is the best way to actually leverage your time as a dentist. And one of the analogies that I want to use is if you manage a hotel, you don't change the sheets on the bed and you don't make the coffees, and you know how to do those things because invariably you've actually sat there as a dental, as a hotel manager, working on these skills and actually making your way to the top. But once you get there, your job is just to manage those things. And dentistry is a bit like that. And as Dr. Cernick said, the person in the room with the most intelligence is the dentist. And one of the biggest mistakes that we make as dental practitioners is we try to do everything ourselves. And I find the practices that I've hung around with that do things the best upskill their teams and teach everyone around them how to do things for them and leverage their time. So it's really, really important that you train and then you trust your team and just step back. I'm astounded with what I see in some dental practices and how they perform. So just a little bit about myself. I don't want to go on about it too much, but I think it's important that you know that, you know, even though I am a dental hygienist and I'm a practice manager, I've worked throughout my lifetime with multiple dental practices. One of the most fortunate things that you can do as a dental hygienist is you can change employment if you need to. And I was probably a little bit obsessed with learning. So I used to jump from practice to practice, probably stick around 2 years and then go, because I was always searching for new information and a new experience. And I eventually settled and I stopped moving, which is, you know, a really good thing. But in the meantime, I peered over the shoulders of some really amazing people. For instance, I've worked for somebody that was the first person to actually introduce CEREC to Australia. And in fact, you know, that was more than 30 years ago. That dentist also had 3 hygienists on his books back in 1984 when I started working for him. So what I've also practiced in high-end Sydney. I went to Switzerland for 2 years. I was the first hygienist in Outback, New South Wales, where the practice won a Telstra Business Award. And I've always chased the best of the best. I have ended up in Adelaide, where my family is, and thanks to Zoom and airplane travel, you know, putting things online makes things very accessible, and the community in dentistry is really happy to learn online. And look, it's a lot more comfortable sitting there, right, in your Ugg boots. So what I can do is I'm really passionate about developing your team. And, you know, I think team is an overused word, your dental team, but seriously, if you can develop awesome leadership skills and you can outsource to your team and you foster a really good cohesive culture in your practice, then you can be one of those practices that I can help grow by at least $500,000 in a 12-month period. and beyond. So, you know, it blows me away. There's probably some people sitting online today who can attest to that. So firstly, I want to talk to you about some fundamentals. So there's some fundamental theories that I've had spinning around in my head sometime, and I've pulled it all in from all of those amazing people that I've met. And the first fundamental I want you to understand is this chart here. So I've done an X and Y axis, and what I noticed in dentistry, if you can see on the left side and the right side, you can be a very reactive practitioner or a very proactive practitioner. Likewise, you can actually be a technician or a therapist. Now, I'll start with the reactive technician, someone who just reacts to what they see in a patient mouth. And, you know, that's a bit of the disease repair model of dentistry. You see something broken, you see something damaged, you see something diseased. And as Tom explained, you know, with the 10 millimeter stick that gets poked into pockets, but the reactive technician is the mechanic. And that's the person who is very reactive. These practices are often quite busy and crazy busy, but they're not as profitable as they can be. So it's interesting that these models, as they increase, also increase their productivity and production. So then we move to the top left-hand corner, which is the reactive therapist. Now, we've all heard the word gum gardener before. It's nothing new, but I term those people that, you know, I see the plaque, I see the calculus, and my job is to clean that off. And that's just being reactive, what's turning up in the mouth. We then move to the proactive side of the diagram. And I love people that live on this proactive side. It's really where I've spent most of my career in dentistry. But to be fair, the proactive technicians is where a lot of the profession is now. It's not a judgment. I feel that it's really important that we're proactive, whether we're a technician or a therapist. But these people are the engineers. They're the people who are perhaps doing lots of crown and bridge work. They're seeing fine cracks in teeth and covering them. And I've spent a lot of my career living in that quadrant. But where I encourage everybody to look is to the proactive therapist, which is what we call the healer. And Tom alluded to that in his first presentation. And it's, you know, moving from engineer to healer or incorporating both of them is where I encourage the entire profession to sit. And to be honest, with COVID has presented a really unique situation to the world and our patients. And, you know, for the first time in history, they understand that little tiny organisms, things that live in our bodies or habitate in our bodies or get into our bodies, are actually making us unwell. And it allows us to commence this different type of conversation with our patients. And, you know, I look at the healers. I would really love to, at the end of all of your careers, be able to look back and say, you know, I made a real difference to my patient. I just didn't fix the broken stuff. I just didn't, you know, knock off the bits and the barnacles that are hanging around. I actually made a real difference in my patient's airway, in their breathing, in their entire health. So that's the first fundamental that I would like you to understand. Robert T. Kiyosaki, nothing new here, but this is a bit of a business model. Business slide. Years and years ago, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and it opened my eyes to something pretty fundamental, which was that, you know, I used to live in the E quadrant. I was an employee and I had a job. So that meant that I exchanged time for money. I went to work every day and I just, clocked in and clocked out, and that's how I made money. And after reading this book, and I'm sure a lot of you had read this book, it's timeless. It's something that is worthwhile everyone having a look at. But, you know, throughout probably the last 20 years, I've tried to make more of a shift into the I quadrant where, the money that I have made, I've invested, you know, in things like property and different business ventures that actually I can make money from the investment. So you know what that's like. It's making money while you sleep. Now, if we look at most employee dentists, they do sit in the E quadrant. So your employees are someone else and you have a job. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Some people feel very comfortable with that. Interestingly, it can be quite stress-free. And then some of you get, really brave and all get sick of working for someone else, and you move into the self-employed quadrant or the S quadrant. And that's where you're self-employed. But guess what? You've bought yourself a job. And you're still exchanging time for money. And in fact, you're exchanging a lot of time for money. So it's a really brave thing to move to that. And what we're talking about today with all of the speakers today is to try and shift you over into a business owner where you own systems. And when you can train your teams and upskill them and then shift it into knowledge that can be passed from one team member to another, not necessarily from you, and you create all of the systems around that, I feel then that you become the business owner where you own a system. And interestingly, people who make it to that quadrant can start to take some holidays and spend some time having a cocktail on the beach, hopefully knowing that their practice is still generating a good income. Often, though, the business owner who owns the system is still the principal of the practice who is generating most of the money in a business. And that's that ties them up somewhat, because they honestly feel that they can't take time off because the production of the practice will drop dramatically. And of course, the investor, where you make money from the investments that you have. So this is a quite a fundamental slide. So I want you to think about different things, moving from the proactive technician to the reactive technician to the proactive engineer, and also this cash flow quadrant from Mr. Kiyosaki. Now, I honestly, with all my heart, feel that the biggest lost opportunity in dentistry is creating a hygiene department. And hygiene departments can be done very well and they can be done very poorly. And I'm very fortunate that, I became a hygienist 33 years ago, when the only school in Australia was in South Australia, and we had very high competition to actually get into the hygiene school, and we were offered the best of the best positions when we got out, and we actually got paid very well. I was really surprised when I went into consulting that the rest of Australia has still not adopted, after 47 years of hygienists in this country, have still not adopted hygiene departments. Now, if you do want to progress to a hygiene department, which I encourage everyone to do, are you maximising it as well? And I seriously don't want to lecture you about this. I just want you to consider the lost opportunity that's sitting in your practice. Now, you see a little star next to the word hygiene on my slide, and OHT. I know now that we call them oral health. We call ourselves oral health therapists or therapists/hygienists. I am still stuck on the hygienist word, and because I deal a lot with people in the USA, I still stick to the word hygienist, or as they say, dental hygienist. So I am biased. And I guess when I, just to explain why I'm a little bit biased, hygienists and the old hygiene version were very periodontal and disease-centric. I really feel that someone in your practice needs to be passionate about periodontal disease. And even though oral health therapists have a lot broader skill range than the hygienist, I just feel that there's a huge lost opportunity in the periodontal therapy area. So this brings me to the question, why are dentists doing their own scale and cleans? And look, generally it's out of necessity. I had a client I was coaching last year that actually counted how many scale and cleans he did last year, and he did over 2,000. And when you note that, in a 40-hour week, you've only got just a bit less than 1,800 hours in a year, and he's doing 2,000 scale and cleans, where is the room left to do any restorative work? So that's something I want you all to question yourselves. I honestly believe if you are doing your own scale and cleans that you are willfully lowering your hourly rate, because as we know, you cannot, or we don't seem to charge as much for scale and cleans and periodontal therapy as we do for other restorative procedures. And invariably what happens is, because the rebate is not as high with health funds, or we're not able to charge, what happens is our standards lower, and we try to race them through and speed them through in a lot less time than is really required. So I just want to run through very quickly some dentist to hygienist employment ratios around the world. It's difficult to get this research and the data, and I have managed to pull some out. So the USA and Spain, for instance, there's one dentist for every hygienist in the country. It's interesting, there's over 200,000 of each across the United States. If you go to Japan, for every 3 dentists, there's 2 hygienists. And in Australia, we're about 5 to 1. Those who practice in private practice, it's much lower than that. So I've worked in practices where there's been 4 hygienists in the practice and only 1 or 2 dentists. And I know there's some friends of mine in the US, Professor Larkin, and has at least 4 hygienists in his practice of only 2 years that he oversees. And his friend, Dr. Chubiak, has 10. And he has 10 hygienists in Southern California, and they're just chock-a-block full. So these are the type of statistics, that are around. And there are multiple practices around the world which have a hygienist-dentist ratio of 6 to 1. And that astounds me. But as far as business goes, and as far as being able to take a holiday and sit on the beach and have a cocktail with all of that money generating while you're away, and elevating patient care, I see this as a bit of a no-brainer. So the history of hygiene, I won't go into this too much, but Alfred Phones back in 1907 trained his cousin Irene Newman. Now, that woman would make me want to brush my teeth all the time. I can assure you, she'd scare me. But poor old Irene was one of the first, and she's someone that we really probably should look up to, and I shouldn't make jokes about. But I found some really gorgeous pictures on the internet of some original dental and surgeon kits. So I just wanted to show them to you. So it wasn't until 1917 that Irene actually graduated as a legal hygienist. Took a long time. There was a huge amount of groundswell where these girls were these ladies were working or moonlighting, not actually legalised. And generally that's how things start. But it took until 1917 for the first group of hygienists to be trained in Connecticut. And in Australia, it was 1971. So I want to talk briefly now about why would we employ a dental hygienist anyway? So number one, it's to leverage the dentist's time, of course, and to leave the dentist free to do higher skilled and profitable services. I drum this into the mind of the hygienists that I train, because it's really important when they're in that room for that hour that they know the 6 reasons. I have 6 reasons why they're there, and they keep coming back to it. Number 2, which it probably could be number 1, is relationship building. It really, if you can create trust with another key team member, it'll create much more stickiness in your practice, and retention rates will skyrocket. Often your patients will tell your hygienist things that you don't know, and I used to come home and my husband would say, "How on earth did you find that out?" And I guess I am a sticky beak, but patients would trust me. I'd share things with them, they'd share things with me, and that relationship building in a practice is really important. As a dentist, it's very, very hard to do that while you've got your hands in the patient's mouth and you've got the drill going. The third reason, obviously, we're there for disease prevention and periodontal therapy, education of our patients, therapy, and there's a lot of undiagnosed perio in Australia, and I'll mention that in just a moment. The other thing, gathering data, things like photographs, radiographs, doing hard tissue and perio charts, biofilm samples, all of the things that take a lot of time that don't have to be done by the dentist. A dentist would turn up in my room to do an exam, and I already had 4 photographs up on the screen. I already had the hard and soft tissue charting done. I already had the radiographs, OPGs, bite rings, PAs, and we'd already started a conversation with the patient about all of the things that were going on there. It becomes really easy for a dentist to walk into the room of a well-skilled dental hygienist and, pretty much doink the patient on the head with a pencil, and they're quite happy with whatever treatment is suggested. And one of the reasons for that, as I mentioned, is trust. And it is the job of the hygienist to plant those seeds. I was on some Facebook pages where some of the hygienists were having a bit of a rant, and they said, oh my God, why can't they just leave us to do our periodontal therapy? That's what we want to do. But it is very important that any hygienist in the practice is actually commenting on and assessing, not diagnosing, but commenting on assessing different types of treatments that can be done in the surgery. And then that brings me to number 6, which pretty much 2 logs burning is a phenomenon that I learnt from Dr. Cernick years ago. The 2 logs burning phenomenon is where treatment suggestions are supported by someone else other than the dentist. So you know what it's like. You go camping, you put 1 log on the fire, it burns, you put a second log on the fire and it bursts into flames and just keeps going. That's if you're a good Girl Guide or Boy Scout. Now, I just want to move on to the other bonuses. So those 6 reasons are extremely important, but there are some bonuses that, come along with employing a hygienist. And it absolutely, number 1, can increase your practice production in 2 ways. Number 1, it does guarantee that ongoing stream of revenue separate to the primary clinician. And as Tom spoke about with the 1/3, 2/3 scenario, it's critical that you can go into a practice where you have this ongoing stream of revenue in the practice. In fact, I worked at a practice where 45% of the revenue was from the dental hygienist department alone. The 1/3, 2/3 is kind of an international standard of what should be achievable, but we've even achieved much more than that. The second reason, the second part of increasing practice production, once you remove the scale and cleanse and periodontal therapy from the dentist appointment book, it then allows dentists to focus on much higher fee producing services, such as orthodontics, or unless you're taking on Dr. Hagliasis's training, they can even become very involved in that. But as a hygienist, I wasn't able to do crowns. I'm not able to do implants. I'm not able to do orthodontic diagnoses. These sorts of things are much better in the hands of all the dentists who have a 5-year degree in that area, and then a lot more. And you don't need 5 years of dentistry to be able to diagnose periodontal disease. There is a really interesting statistic that only 6% of any dental degree is actually periodontal, whereas our entire time at university and college is actually spent in that area, and caries, of course. So the bonus number 2 is avoiding potential litigation for supervised neglect. Now, I have to be really careful, but I am very, very motivated by the numbers in dentistry. In fact, one of the first things I do when I go into a practice is I analyse the data that sits in your practice management software. The data tells me some amazing things. I like to know how many active patients are sitting in your database, and I like to know what types of services are performed on that database. For instance, I go looking straight to the periodontal area quite often. And, for instance, if you've got a database of 3,000 patients and you've only done 2 perio charts in the last year, it's telling a story. Now, I don't know what that story is, and we ask more questions. Is perio charting being done and just not being recorded? Is it being done, recorded, and then not invoiced? However, we are leaving ourselves very wide open to litigation. We know that 30 to 70% of our patients have some form of periodontal disease, depending on the age bracket. I always go very conservative and say, let's say it's about 1/3. And so if you don't have 1/3 of your practice that's actually diagnosed as a periodontal patient in some way and then adequately treated and put into therapy, it's a really big missed opportunity, number one. But number two, it could be an area for litigation down the track. And I'm going to show you a little bit of an aside. Please see if you can hang in there with me. I created a really simple formula which tells me what's doable in your office. So if P is a potential hygiene appointments or periodontal therapy, or any hygiene appointment in your practice, and we take A as your active patient base, we can do some really cool things. So P equals AA over 3. Now I'll explain what that means. If you have 1,000 patients in your practice and 1/3 are perio and 2/3 are non-perio, I'll see if I can not confuse myself here. So 1/3 patients are perio. That means about 333 people in your patient base probably have periodontal disease of some form or other. Just, they fall into that 4 millimetre pocket or greater. And those people generally require 4 appointments a year just for maintenance. So that's them coming back every 3 months. At the end of the year, that totals 1,332 patients in your practice, appointments in your practice that are available, whether that's a 50-minute appointment or a 1-hour appointment. Whatever you choose is doable for the patients with periodontal therapy. I personally would never go less than a 50-minute appointment. And that leaves 2/3 of your patients that don't have perio. They often have other things that are required, but if we calculate that at 667 patients who only require 2 appointments a year, essentially that's another 2,666 patients. If we add that up and we get 100% attendance, there's actually an error on this slide, we need to add the 2,666 and the 1,332. I'll show you that in a minute. And if 100%, the other point I wanted to make is a full-time hygienist actually only has 1,748 hours in a week where they can work, in a year where they can work, which is 38 hours times 46 weeks. Of course, I choose 46 weeks because we have 4 weeks holiday and 2 weeks public holiday. So I'll just flick to the next slide, which the 1,000, oh no, that is correct, sorry. The 667 times 2 is 1,332 as well, which totals 2,666. So that's correct. So if you look at this slide, if you down the left-hand side, I've got, let's count our active patients in our practice. And active patients are people, in my opinion, that have been in the last 18 months at least once. If they came in 5 years ago and they're in your database, they're not active anymore. So the active patients are there, they're available. They're not your reappointed patients. I actually find that the people that walk out the door with their next appointment is much, much lower than that, even though they have been in the practice in the last 18-month period. But the potential that we've got sitting there for 1,000 patients is 2,666. And then if we look across the top of the line, we've got $150, $200. It depends on what you're charging your patient as to the potential that's sitting there. Now, this little table I created knowing this would be 100% attendance of all those 1,000 patients. And look, that is unrealistic, but I find, and I have found, that as you increase care and you deliver comprehensive care, that number really does improve and gets higher. So retention can be, particularly with the Larkin protocol, well over 90%, and in fact sometimes 95%. A lot of practices, sadly, around Australia are way less than 40%, and I've walked into some that are 27, there's 16, and it's a real a lost opportunity. Again, it's a real area of churn. So what I have highlighted in this slide is that if you, for instance, had 3,000 active patients and you apply it to the formula, the potential is 8,000. If you're charging $200 for your hygiene appointment, that's 1.6 million. That's a lot of perio and non-perio and patient appointments that can sit at the base of your business, churning along, being generated constantly while you're doing other work. Now, of course, we don't always get 100%. So even at 50% success rate, that's still 800,000, which I think is a huge bonus to any business. So this is not including any of the dentist's production in the practice. The difference in the hourly rate, what you're actually charging your patients, depends very much on the type of hygiene that's being delivered. So we have the two types of hygiene that's being done. And honestly, I spent a lot of my early career just doing treadmill hygiene, and it becomes really quite monotonous and difficult to keep doing that type of work. And generally, you don't generate a great income for that. But the minute you shift into comprehensive care, when you take care of patients at a much higher level, you have educations around airway, biofilm sampling, all of the things, you become the hygienist that you really want to do. You can start delivering a lot higher hourly rate. Now, I've put a range of treatment there at $180 to $350 per hour. I kid you not, I have clients in some parts of Australia that are much higher than that, and patients that are very happy to pay it. So what I want to talk about now is just the retention. I touched on it before, but it just increases dramatically with comprehensive care. And the Dentistry IQ magazine in 2016 did a study on this and said, analysis of dental practice data shows hygiene reappointment rates most frequently it's the single most reason that separates $500,000 practices from $100,000 practices. Now that's US dollars, which relates to 700 to 1.4 million in Australian dollars. So this has been researched. I have a practice that I've been working with over the last 18 months and have managed to move from their total practice monthly production from 127 to 190. And I put the split below as to how that came about, because some of it was, I really only worked on hygiene and mostly hygiene, but the flow and effect to the dentist was astronomical. So, after doing a bit of work with this practice, we now have an annual production pro rata rate of 2.28. Look, I won't get too bogged down with should I employ an associate dentist or a dental hygienist. I think it's pretty clear from my presentation today where I sit. If you want a conversation around that, I'm quite happy to go through data with you at any point and have that conversation. I think the main reason, to be honest with you, is dental hygienists want to and are very highly trained in periodontal therapy. Associate dentists want to do dentistry. So before I finish today, I want to talk to you about something I call hanging up the handpiece for the final time. I want you to consider, are you a mechanic or a healer? So if you're able to visualize the final scene, perhaps you're 55, 65 or 75 and you're deciding to, finish doing dentistry, visualize that final scene. You are sitting there with your last patient. Are you a mechanic or are you a healer? Were you self-employed? Were you a business owner or a leveraged investor? So as you close your eyes and project your mind forward, and I'd really love you to do all of this. I know I've blurted a lot of information at you, but I really want you to concentrate on the very last patient that you're seeing. And I had that moment in January last year, and honestly, I could not look in the appointment book in the next week. Otherwise, I would have just turned up. I see those names in there and I just, they're my friends. So probably you'll have a few more grey hairs at that stage, or if you've got hair, and hopefully you're still fit enough to enjoy the fruits of your retirement. Do you take that handpiece from your hand and you place it in the holster for the last time? And just cast your mind back over the last 30 or 40 years of dentistry, and what did you achieve? What's going to be your legacy? How is it that you want to be remembered? Did you enjoy your life's work, or did you limp across the line begrudgingly? It's how did you treat your patients? How did you treat your staff? Were you a leader? Did you save lives? Did you make people happy? So what is the level of oral care and oral health in your patients, and what is your patient's overall health? So I want you to consider that after we wrap up today, of all the things. It's really important, I feel, to visualize your life. And I quite often sit on the rocking chair of a 90-year-old woman and look back and see how I want to have spent my lifetime. And consider these three things: a mechanic or a healer, and will you be the dentist that you always wanted to be? So just before I wrap up, I want you to take note of these two books and podcasts. Hygiene Superstar changed my life. I was handed a copy of that book in March 2019 as I boarded a plane back to Australia by Dr. Chubiak. And even though it has the word hygiene on there, I'd recommend every single person in dentistry gets onto Amazon and orders himself a copy. It will change the way you consider the medicine and the dentistry that you want to deliver. They also have a podcast, and the podcast has only about 8 episodes, but I pretty much have it on repeat in my car, which just shows how sad I really am. But honestly, Tom Larkin and Mike Chubiak are so intelligent, such intelligent men who are very clear in the way they deliver and express their ideas. And so not only is there the book, there's the podcast. They're firing that podcast up again fairly soon. And the book on the right, which Tom mentioned in his presentation earlier, Dentistry That Changes Lives, The Road Less Travel. I'm sure Tom will make that link available to everyone. It's a 25-page document. And once again, I've probably read it half a dozen times. There's so many interesting ideas in there that and concepts that are important to consider. So that is it for me today. Doing these things you think is going to be easy, but they're always, even for us presenters, sometimes there's a little bit nerve-wracking. I would encourage you all to join the Hygiene Hackers group on Facebook. I get a bit confused about Facebook still. We have a page and we have a group. I want you to look for the Hygiene Hackers group with that logo, that particular logo. And in there, you'll see me, you'll see Tom, you'll see some Dr. Chubiak, you'll see some pretty clever minds in dentistry. And as Tom mentioned in his presentation at the start, we'll be moving into a workplace space. So thank you for your attendance today and taking the time to listen to my presentation. I'm going to jump out of the hot seat and give it back to Prabin, not Dr. Prabin, as I called him earlier. And then I'll be available for some Q&As at the end. And please reach out to me anytime. I get very lonely working in my office at home, so I'm more than happy to take your calls if you can find me. And if I can find Prabin in this room, I will. I'll put you back to him. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Sue. Thank you. Thank you for your amazing presentation. Wow, wow, wow. One of the things which I always get inspired from, presenters like Sue, Dr. Michael Senik, or Tom. I mean, it's always, we keep learning and growing every single day. And I'm so grateful, how Dr. Tom Larkin and Sue is right now, they are changing or transforming every dental practices, giving the importance of hygiene. It is so important, and particularly for our clients, those who are watching this right now. They have been implementing this course. So I highly recommend you, if you haven't, reach out to Dr. Tom Larkin and Sue, and they are amazing. And the program which they are delivering, it's very unique and it's very brand new in Australia. All right, on that note, so let's get started. And by the way, guys, we are just in good time. It's 12 past 3, still an hour to go for Q&A. So I'll jump in for 15-20 minutes. Some of the questions you have asked me. So I'll do a quick presentation. On top of that, if there's any specific questions you have for Professor Dr. Larkin, or that might be to Dr. Michael Senik, or Sue, or Dr. Zon Hegleses. So please just type your questions, because after my presentation, straight we'll go to Q&A. All right. So I hope that's easier. Now, let me quickly bring my presentation here. So we are all on it. All right. Okay, I hope you can see my screen. Boom. All right. It's so nice to see, and a little bit about myself. I am Prabin Gautam. I help dental practices to build their brand and generate more leads, more appointments, and more revenue. So we are, at 360, we are very committed to your practice growth. So we have got a range of clients, and the clients are really seeing the delight. And our mission is to help you to create opportunities, help you to grow your business. Let's get on to it. Let's get here started. All right. So about 360. So we are full service at 360. We're full service dental marketing, from a lead generation to referrals. So that's what we believe on. It's not about just generating the leads, which is costing a lot these days. And you have heard from including Dr. Michael Senik and Sue, this is how, the acquisition cost. Now, you might be thinking, if you're new, you might be thinking, what makes us different in the marketplace? Because obviously there are so many marketing companies out there, or marketing agencies, if you like. So our point of difference is we position ourselves as a trusted dental growth partner, which means, we have a specialized team with specialized knowledge. On top of that, when we work with you, we don't work with your competitors. So we would help you to increase your competitive advantage in the market. All right, let's get in. So, obviously I love this slide. Actually, you can see here, when you're a practice owner, there's not a one thing. You got to do so many things, right? Treating patients, acquiring, hiring, recruitment, managing, building brand, growing, and list goes on and on, my friend. So what is this? Is confusion. Yeah, from confusion to having the clarity is so important, which is in every business, but in dental practice, it is a must to have that. So the first questions I have been asked is, Prabin, how to use the team and resource efficiently to increase appointments or to grow your practice. As you have heard from our amazing speakers today, I would not go back or reflect it, but I'm sure you have enough notes there. But I'll just go straight to the point is, it's not about having the to-do list. Many times when you go to the seminars or webinars or whatever the forms you would do, people say about, just write to-do list or your priority list of the day. It's fine. But for a practice owners or practice manager like you, you would know there's not a one list here. There's 100 priorities in a day. So I totally get it. So all we got to do is stop trying to do everything. And that's where, in dentistry, it is so important, like in any other business. And the beauty here is to start delegating, finding the right people, finding the trusted team or trusted people who can help you to make your life easier. And I'm a great fan of it, because anyone is here, because we have got a really time poor. All we are here is to make the life easy for anyone. All right. Now, second question is about how to use the team efficiently to build your practice brand. And I'm a great fan, a great advocate of building brand. It's not about just having any practice, because it's very competitive, as you know, because even, within your area or your locations, there is more than 3, 4, 5, 6 dental practices. And don't take me wrong. If it is a CBD, like in Parramatta or in Sydney or in Brisbane or in Melbourne, oh goodness, same street or the same building have number of. So in this time or in this challenging environment, the question is how to build your practice or brand, right? So that you can easily not just acquire the new patients, but delight them, give them a wow experience. I think the first step is all about who is having what kind of interaction. It is a key to understand, whether from your receptionist to your practice manager to your associate dentist to a principal dentist, really to understand what kind of the interactions it is happening in every day to day. So a couple of ideas here. So for you would be, if you're watching this, write down with a pen handy, couple of notes you can write down. Few things is social media check-in. I know, to get optimize your team, you can do so many things. And I'm sure many of you are already paying for Google ads, Facebook ads, and the list goes on and on and on. But some of the things which we forget is very few things, a few ideas which, your receptionist can do it, or practice manager can do it, or a coordinator can do it very easily. Like means, you would have a Facebook page. So, the patients who comes in, they can check in. So what does that do? That will really help you, their friends and families, to see that they are there on your practice. Second other ideas is Google review. Now, I wouldn't just say why it is important, because I'm sure everyone knows what is the value of Google these days, especially Google reviews or Google Map. So it is critical to have Google reviews, especially, requesting your patients, giving the patient's journey, how they have, how you have helped them. I know we can't do the testimonial, understand, but Google reviews is all about having the experience, so that they can refer. And more likely here is the more reviews you get, the higher chance to get to found easily in organic Google or organic ranking, if you like. And obviously, before and after. So I don't know what you think about, but right now we are servicing more than 80 over clients in a full service on marketing. And obviously everyone right now is, a lot of our maximum of our clients, they want to service high level treatments, which I get that. But the problem is they don't have really, or when we work closer, they don't have the before and after. And it's so hard to, to generate the new patients or, and take them to a ascension ladder when we don't have. So it is something your team or your receptionist can help us, or help your marketing team to do it. So providing that before and after photos, which means you can give the patient's experience or patient journey through your websites, through your videos, through your social medias and whatnot, right? So these are some ideas for you. So again, the key here is to, sometime we start and then we forget it, but really having that clarity, having the weekly target is a key. Otherwise you just, one time, but there is no commitment. So it is important to have that commitment or a weekly target moving week by week, and then obviously month and a yearly basis. So I hope that gives you an idea on how to use your team efficiently to build your appointment, to build your brand. Now let's go to the third questions, this is very common. And every time I do a practice growth live session, people ask me, okay, Praveen, I know there's so much we got to, pay more to get more. I understand, but how do we reduce the cost per patient's acquisition? Well, that's a great question, because right now, if you would say is it's costing, more and more and more. And I don't know where you are tuning in right now, but obviously the patient acquisitions is, $35, $40, $50 or more, depends upon where the locations are from Google or any other media. So we need to also understand how to reduce the cost per patient's acquisition. So here are some ideas for you. Obviously, we're going to talk about retention, referrals and reactivation, which is the pillar, I believe, is the key into reduce your cost per acquisition. So let's go with the retention. So the idea here is to leverage your existing patient. I know it's easy, every time I talk with a dental practice, they will say, okay, look, Praveen, we need a new patient, just bring the new patient, that's okay. Look, I get that, right? Especially if your practice is very new, under 3 years, I get that, okay, new patient. But also, if you're like already 7 years plus or 10 years plus dental practice, and obviously you want to chase the new, get that, but obviously you can't just take advantage. You just can't just sit down on, with the existing. So you got to retain, you got to find out the ways how to leverage that existing patients, right? Some ideas is then when we ask, look, what do you do? What do you do to, to retain the existing? All they say is, look, we call them or we just text them a recall. That's okay. Look, I totally get it. But here, the key questions is we are not dealing with one generation right now, right? So we are dealing with more than 6 generations easily. We are dealing with different demographics, different people, from the child to elderly. So it is absolutely key to understand what is the channel are they using. So I also believe in every time when I talk in a practice growth live, I talk about right patients, communicating with the right patients in the right channel with the right message and the right time. So it is important to understand what channels your ideal patients are tuning in. Are they tuning in Instagram? Are they tuning in Facebook? Are they tuning on just a quick call? What are they tuning in? Or there's a quick SMS? So we got to understand that whole ecosystem. And that's where you would have found today from our amazing speakers that things are changing rapidly. So we got to really understand. So it's not about, oh, look, this system will do this. I mean, we have sent the SMS, we have sent a call, but sometimes it is also finding out the new ways to do it. All right, so these are some ideas. So other thing which we implement for our clients is, obviously you would see from here, is goal is to ultimate lead magnet, educating the clients, educating. And then obviously more referrals. These are some organic ways, because sometimes, guess what? We are looking on all the things, but sometimes we missed out who these local businesses are around the dental practice. So it is key, absolutely key. So understand local businesses, where there is schools, medical centers, there is any commercial building, that's something you can tap in, or that's something your marketing persons or marketing team could be able to help through all the data and the research they do, right? And obviously from there, you would see gap free, checkup and clean, which is, obviously the different pricing. This is just some ideas for you. And then obviously take to the full checkup and clean, or teeth whitening. And the fourth one is obviously Social 6, Invisalign or ceramic brushes, take them. And then obviously Smiles Makeover, implants, crowns, veneers, which is, the different price range. The point here is, which I like about Dr. Michael Senik, always touched in many of his workshops, is not just, doing one treatment, but giving them a full scope, giving them really the full scope of the treatment plan. And that's absolutely key, because so many times we chase, the new patients, but, you do a low-end treatment and then you forget it. And these patients, if they want, their kids want a braces, or they want anything, surgery, emergency, they just Google it. So literally that means you're not really captivating that. You're not taking them to the journey. I would use like a penthouse. You're not taking them to the penthouse or full ascension ladder. So it is absolutely important, whether you are a practice manager, whether that may be dentist, or that might be, your receptionist. It is absolutely important to understand the patient's journey, where they are going through. Right. So let's get to the next slides. Other one is, how can you be their family? So one of the things which I believe is, in the retention, especially when you talk about retention, it's, having the patients getting the preferred dentist. So how each patient will bring 2 to 3 of his family members. It is a key. So how do you position yourself as a trusted dentist in your local area? That's something for you to think. And is your marketing team accountable? Because obviously it's not just you and your in-house team. You also need a coordination with your marketing team. And that's where it is key to have everyone accountable on that. So also, obviously when you do that, your marketing performance need to be tracked daily and weekly. So when we work with our clients, we work very, in a daily wise, generating the leads, but also making sure that those existing patients retentions are very high, because our aim is to not only generate the low end patients, but also high end patients. So taking them to a different treatment plans. Now, on the retention, I also like to mention, which is the second quadrant, it's the referrals. Many times, we get the patients, we really, we serve them, we do what we need to do, but really don't give that wow factor. And that's where it is important to have sowing the referral seed from day one. And when we work with the clients, some of our clients are here right now logging in, and the referral campaign we do is, our belief is one patient should bring at least 3 to 5 patients in just 6 to 9 months. That's what we believe. So that's where you need to add value to these patients. So the question is now, how can we add value? Well, you can educate the patients, because not many people know all the new technology, some of the technology you have just heard this morning. So you can share some videos, you can share some insights, you can share some, some really easier way they can consume and they can pass to their friends and families. I think that's so important, especially now the cost of acquisition of new patients is going high and high and high. So it is absolutely key to get those referrals on your way. And obviously broaden your referral chain. So it's not about just, as I said, your local business is not about just from one angle, but really understanding 360. Who are some referral chains? Who are the local business around? Who can able to, whether that may be specialists can refer you. Who are the some people around or influencers or local influencer or local businesses, if you like, can really refer you. So got to understand that full scope, right? Okay, and the key question is there a collaboration between your practice team and the marketing team? And I hear all the time is, look, I mean, either marketing team is not doing well or practice, is sending so many leads and appointment. The receptionist is not following or vice versa, whatever the case is. So it is key to have a collaboration really in your front-end team as well as the persons who is generating the new leads for you. And that's where we optimize all the resource. All right. So when we work with at 360, when we work with the clients, we make sure that, they have a dedicated WhatsApp group. So every morning, every day, they get a new leads. They send the leads to their receptionist. On top of that, so many of our clients who are watching this and checking this right now, even they have said, okay, Praveen, some of the feedback is sometime our receptionists just sit there, our practice managers just sit doing literally nothing. But also we would like to help, some Google reviews, some social media checking, all those sort of things. So it's again that having that collaborations, working together from your team in-house to the marketing people, whoever doing the marketing. But idea here is to really understanding that key goal, key KPIs, and generating that the patients, the number of the patients or the quality of the patients, if you like. But obviously many times we have seen that marketing companies come with a report like, oh, this is this report. Okay, this is a traffic, this is bounce back. But, who would have a time to go through all this report, like 20-page report, and then, and oh, this is bounce rate, this is negative keywords. Who would have? All you care is generating the quality patients every single day on your practice. And that's what at 360 we are totally committed to get that for our clients. All right. So what I'm talking about here is pretty much you need an implementation partner, whether that may be a receptionist, your dental hygienist, a dental assistant, or practice manager, or a marketing company. So all they should be in the same page. And I believe it is a one single enterprise. It's not about, just the one people trying to do 100 things, but really one enterprise. We are all talking same language. And of course, the language is dentistry here, but patients' experience making them wow factor. All right. So how to use resource efficiently to reduce cost per acquisitions. So there are some ideas is the reactivation. Now, I understand, if you are a new 3 to 5 years, within 5 years, I understand there's a whole new patients campaign we got to set up because obviously there's no patients there. I understand that. But however, so many practices who have more than 10 years, they have been in 1992 or 82, whatever the year is, so many database they have, which means they're literally sitting in the gold mine, but still they are not optimizing. So it is absolutely key to reactivation those patients. So all those lapsed patients or inactive patients, if you like, to bring them to a active one. So the question is, how do you do it? Obviously, if we can't go back to 10 years or 20 years, what happened, because obviously there was not much record there. But ideally, when we work with our clients, so ideally we would go about 3 years to start with, understand, who these patients are, and understand how can we get them back? What are the ways, to get them back, or what do they see a value in our dental practice? So we work out tailored solutions and make sure that, so in a couple of the practices which we are working right now is obviously $50 off. So look, you used to come here, we missed you, here is a $50 voucher. And obviously with whatever the things happening in your dental practice, suppose let's say you have just moved, or you have a new associate dentist just joined, or you have, there is something new which is exciting, and you want to circulate to those lapsed patients or inactive patients, and do you want to give a welcome back credit, $50, $100, whatever the credit it might be, to make them feel special. It is absolutely key, because guess what, you spend one time, but there will be goal to come back, because there's already trust built in. So we're not, again, doing this crazy offer and bringing them, but really hitting that harder on the patients who already have the trust. But some reason they may have left out. Some reason they may have changed their mind. Some reason they may have whatever it might be the circumstances. The key here is to add value and obviously bring them along, right? So I hope you are understanding it. Now let's go to some ideas. I mean, some ways to reactivate the patients. Is there a number of ways. You don't have to always, I mean, phone is the easiest one, but when there is more than 1,000 of patients, it always get tricky, right? So whether, because your receptionist can't phone all the 1,000 people, and obviously she is doing amazing work, so you have to serve the patients every day. So always the receptionist or your practice coordinator is always, always on demand. So the key here is to understand or segmenting these patients, right? So these are the patients 3 years ago. These patients were just checking in the low end, just for teeth whitening, or that might be they were just came here for implants, whatever it might be. And if you can go further down, you can even segment based on the demographic or the locations. That means what is the postcode? What are the patients coming from the past, in the reactivation. So all those, you download all those data, you understand the data, and then you work out the campaigns, like, some of the ideas that might be, okay, if the list is less, receptionist can call, but obviously if the list is more than 500 plus, obviously you need some system or process. So that might be SMS, can be very, very easy, effective. Second, which we have also seen, is you can also upload those datas in your Facebook and really send them a targeted ads. That is very easy to do, and you can achieve that as well. Or perhaps it might be just the YouTube clips, some video, just, hey, we have moved the new premises, we have missed you, come along. So, and right now with our data, what we are seeing is about $17 per, acquiring these sort of the clients, the past clients, or less. So it is actually a no-brainer to have these kinds of campaign running out side by side as well. And other thing is obviously email marketing, which you can see in my screen. Cost effective, very, very effective, wider reach, customized campaign. So if they have left on any of your specific high level treatments, you can customize the message. As I said to you before, right message to a right patient in the right time. So you can really customize the campaign based on your patients, right? And increase loyalty from there. So I hope, again, these are some ideas for you. So if you're really wanting to know more about, so feel free to, contact us. And obviously Gina, who worked very closely with me, she can also give you a call for the 30 minutes complimentary discovery session. So I'm more than happy. Again, our mission is to help you to build your brand, to build your practice, and make your life easy. So on that note, thank you once again. And I'll hand over to the Q&A. We are just on time. So here we go. We have got a Dr. Michael Senik and Sue. Everyone is ready. So we will just get in. And obviously, if you have any questions, feel free to just type your questions. Still, we have got about 20 good 30 minutes left. We are all on time, and obviously after this you can enjoy. So I will just hand over to here. Another.
Right. So I don't know where the questions are coming from. We're here ready to answer them. So if anyone's got some, and thank you very much for that, Pravin. I've also had some questions about receiving the recording later on. We are sending that recording to people who have paid to come along today, but perhaps we can contact 360 Marketing and see what we can do there. So, Michael, is there anything you wanted to add today to what you've heard and listened to?
Well, let's see if there's a question at all, or what questions there are.
Right.
And just waiting for Shalina there.
We have one question for Sue. Deanna, in selecting a practice manager, do you feel it is necessary to have a dental background or excellent managerial skills as their primary skill?
Okay, so perhaps Michael and I will both answer that question. So the question was, because I'm mic'd up and Shalina's not, in selecting a practice manager, do we feel that it's essential that a person has a dental background or a management background, and or does it matter? What are your thoughts on that, Michael?
Typically, I used to hire people that didn't have a dental background. And the reason for that is I put the highest priority was on their personality type, I guess, and how I judge them to be able to handle the task, because it's harder to take somebody who hasn't got that natural personality and unlearn them from things that they have picked up in another practice. And I felt always, well, just my experience was that if I could start with somebody fresh but who was mature and smart and personable, that person had the interest because they weren't all, it was new to them. They were more open and they could handle things very well. Of course, it works both ways. You can have somebody who, for whatever reason, perhaps has moved cities or something like that. But my personal experience has been more on looking at the person in terms of their basic skills and then building on that.
I guess what I have to say here is I've come across a lot of practices that don't have a practice manager at all. And I personally see that as a grave mistake in a business. The dentist should be left to do the dentistry, and anything that can be outsourced to someone else, and whatever you want to call that person, you know, whatever title you want to give them, or you want to give that those tasks to whoever, things that don't need to be done by the dentist. And so I know I'm not exactly answering the question, but I will get to there. I always ask dentists to make a big long list of all the things that they do that can be outsourced, and who is it best to hand those things off to. I became a practice manager as a dental hygienist. Now, I had a lot of life experience and I knew where to go to answer questions. But, you know, I remember my first day on the job as, you know, I just didn't understand payroll and I didn't understand, you know, MYOB and all of those sorts of things. But I outsourced that. You know, I was clever enough to find the job and the task that needed to be done, and I outsourced, you know, what I had to do. In my early days of doing that, I came into a situation in a practice that was really a bit of a mess. And by default, I became practice manager, but I was doing 80-hour weeks myself. And I managed to build that to a point where I could do it in, you know, 2.5 days a week by outsourcing. So I just knew who to hand things off to. And the fabulous thing about that is I was still able to remain 2 days a week as a hygienist, which I really enjoyed, and practice manage. But secondly, it meant that I could take holidays too. So the entire systems that you set up, a system is not something that requires you to work it. And in addition to that question, and getting back to the exact question, having a dental background was very, very, very handy in a whole heap of areas and understanding. But it also meant that if someone called in sick, sometimes I would end up holding the suction because I was the only other person in the practice that knew how to be a dental assistant, or if one of the hygienists didn't turn up because they were unwell or something happened, I ended up back in the dental chair. So having a dental background is important, but I honestly think it's far better to have leadership skills and delegation skills.
I think we're an extra point that you touched on that really I should have mentioned straight away was that if the practice has really good systems that are documented and available to everybody, then you have the ability to have people plug in, and virtually anybody can get in there and do the job if there's systems that are well documented and completely thought through. So you could take any brand new person, have them, and depending on what they're needing to do, whether it's wages or whether it's ordering or whether it's some sort of monitoring, but there's a protocol to that. Now somebody can look through it and then follow that. So, you know, that's probably more important even than anything, because once you've got those systems documented and accessible to everybody, anybody can get in there and do the job. And now then on top of that, you've got, yes, the personality or the experience of that person. But not having the systems means that, you know, you've got gaps all the time.
And I really struggle when I see the poor practice manager also doubling up as the receptionist or doubling up as someone, it just, things don't get done. A lot of people have no idea how many tasks in a dental practice require or need to be done these days. And there's no way that you can become a practice manager who can build the business if you're the person who's also taking the payments and making the appointments. You need to lock yourself away in a designated space and understand marketing and reach out to marketers and have appointments with people and welcome them. You need to run the place like a CEO.
There needs to be an understudy for each critical role as well.
Yeah.
So if somebody falls over, you've got somebody else that can take over.
Yep.
And once again, having those systems there really means anybody can do it, but it's perhaps better to have depends on the size of the practice. A very large practice, having all the knowledge in one person's head is very dangerous.
Yep.
Having it, as I say, having an understudy there, plus having the systems really handles everything. You've always got to sort of hope for the best, but plan for the worst.
No, I entirely agree. Now, where is Miss Shalina? She's got another question.
Yes. I want to buy a second practice. So what is your advice given your extensive experience?
That's such a good question. And it's such a common question, really, that particularly these days, you'll talk to a sort of a 27-year-old dentist who hasn't been out very long, and they just bought one practice, and now suddenly they've got the bug and they think all I have to do is buy more practices. And you only have to look at the history of some big corporations where they also are buying practices, and they'll look at two practices that are very similar. The dentist has similar clinical skills, the same size, same area, same everything, and yet one practice is 3 times bigger than the other. And the corporation will look at both practices and they'll just buy the practice that appears to be doing well. But because they don't really understand what are the mechanics that's causing that change, when things don't work out, they don't know what to do. And I've seen corporations over the years grow and fail. They grow in good times, but they fail because it's a bit like buying real estate in a boom. You can't help but make money. If things go down, you can be losing money. And that's what's been happening with dental practices and corporations. So a lot of them now are struggling. They're not buying anymore. They're sitting on their hands and they're hoping they get more funding just to continue. Now, if you're a young dentist and you're about to buy another practice, the key thing that I would say is, number one, get one practice working very well. So we've just talked about a couple of things like having systems, because your next practice will never be as good as your first practice if you haven't got the systems, because what's making the first practice work is you're there, you're looking, and you may be inefficient, but at least you're doing it. But now you duplicate yourself, you can't be in 2 places at once, and now you're really dependent on systems and training, and that's where things fall over. So get one practice working well, and once you've got that model working and you're not there, take a holiday, see how it goes without you. Now you're testing your systems and you're stress testing it. And if you can do that, then you've figured out how to duplicate yourself. And that, I think, is a really important message that is absolutely lost on most dentists. They don't understand what's involved because they don't know what's working and what's not working.
And I think we've spoken about this many times, duplicating inefficiencies is just not the smart way to go. I've got a lot of clients of mine that wish to do the same thing, and I had a long talk with Professor Larkin about this too, and it's been a real mistake made in the US of buying another one and buying another one. Listen, I would always encourage a young dentist or practitioner to absolutely maximise the space that they've got right now. And what we talk about is capacity. If you're working from 8 till 5, Monday to Friday, and you're feeling that you've got a lot of patients and you just don't have room for them, rather than just buy another practice to fulfill some need in yourself, start to expand your hours. There's Dr. Chubiak, who I mentioned, who wrote Hygiene Superstar. We had an interview the other day, and he explained that he has one team come in from 7 till 1, and he has another team come in from 1 till 8. And this is the reason he has an hygienist. But all of the infrastructure in his practice doesn't change with duplicating the capacity. So he's not having to buy more chairs and more equipment. He's not having his attention split into, 10 different directions at once, because he sits in that one very efficient, very maximized practice. And I would encourage anyone who's buying a practice to be very beware if they're buying a practice that just has the capacity for 2 chairs, because you cannot almost see what's going to come. And if you don't have to move and you can just keep building your infrastructure and upgrade it, I feel that's the best way to go. And I think a really good analogy for that is, I know when I bought my first house, it was a really cute house, but it had no capacity. I couldn't extend the lounge room. I couldn't, put on the family room, because I couldn't really see what was coming in my life. You get to the point where you just have to move because, there's no room to grow. So
Well, think of it. If you owned a taxi company,
Yep.
you would want to have the taxi running 24/7,
Yep.
not just 9 to 5 or something. So clearly you would have a night shift as well, but you can't do the night shift because now you're working 24 and, so it's the same with the practice. Before you buy a second practice, apart from having your systems and having everything work well, have it so that it's running at full capacity, meaning the extended hours, and having, 2 teams come in, because that's the equivalent of having an extra practice. And if that's working, you're already starting to do it,
Yeah.
to do it well.
And I think the philosophy there is not to split yourself into 2 or 3 or 4 different pieces, but learn to duplicate yourself as opposed to halve or divide yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's
Got some more questions, Shalina?
Yes.
Thank you so much, Sue. Michael, we'll just get there now. Obviously, Dr. Professor Larkin.
Thank you.
Would you like to add anything,
Absolutely.
Professor Dr. Larkin here?
Absolutely. Yeah, this is a major pet peeve of mine, is going from 1 practice to 2. I've got a lot of experience with startups and acquisitions, and what I see is the complexity from going from 1 to 2 is not ×2, it's generally ×10. You can really unravel a very content situation by doing this. There's just so many, besides what Michael said about systems and everything being ready, the thing about dentistry that's unique, dentistry does not scale well. It does not scale well because it's a personal service. This personal service is very much connected to me. It's connected to Michael. It's connected to John. And I think what I'm seeing that works the best is a managed group, okay? Where someone, if you bring someone in, they have to be nurtured in-house. You cannot buy another practice and stick an associate in there without making your life very complicated, unless you're extraordinary. Here's something that I see this being driven by large social media groups in the States. Everybody can be an entrepreneur. So my last book that I wrote is called The Dental Entrepreneur. And I coined the term wantrepreneur. And there's a big difference between someone who's an entrepreneur, because there are a lot of gifts involved in that. I'm talking about natural gifts and ability that people are refusing, that quote unquote coaches are refusing to recognize, because they say everybody can do this. And I've just seen so many people bring misery into my life. And dentistry is stressful and hard enough without making your life more complex. So if you are in a situation where you're busting at the seams, just like what Sue said, expand your hours, maximize your facility, possibly increase that. But a second location is just, I'm very much against that.
Great point. Thank you so much, Dr. Larkin. That's a great insight. Now, great to have you, Dr. Zahn.
Yeah, hi everyone.
So would you like to add anything what we on our discussion?
Yeah, look, I think what has been mentioned by Tom and Michael and Sue is that you want to get your current situation right and optimize by extending the hours, increasing the chairs or the expansion within your own site. Get that right, get the systems right, because like Tom just mentioned, it's not jumping into a second site. It's not just doubling your workload. It's adding a factor of 10 to the complexity of it. So work within to get your systems right and expand the systems in place at your current site would be the first port of call.
Thank you, John. That's great. That's great. So let's get to some more questions here.
We've got a question for Praveen. You.
Okay, there's a question for me.
Says, dedicated team WhatsApp group, what you described earlier.
Yep.
When is that used in a busy practice? I'm guessing that's not in off hours. How does it work?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you so much. Obviously, the idea here, the idea came up with making our clients' life easy. I know, with a busy dental practice, there's so many things happening every single day. So, especially with the leads coming through, many marketing companies and many agencies would send the leads. I don't know how they send it, but the emails is obviously a very old ways, and there is no any disadvantage still we are using it. But the point is, the time you get all the emails, and it's already too late. And what we believe is obviously speed should be the competitive advantage for every dental practice. So if you are getting the leads, the high, clients are paying so big dollar for this, generating implants, cosmetics, teeth whitening, all these surgery leads. And then the problem is it's not following on timely. So it's just there. And we don't believe that. So the name of the game here is to be quick, to speed, competitive wise, and that's where you can log that. Someone from the receptionist can call the practice. Thank you for this, and we believe in an hour response. So ultra response. Someone need to call, lock it in the on your dentist diary, whichever the system you are using, and that's what it is. But also, what WhatsApp does is it's really, I think I touched on, it collaborates between the receptionist, it collaborates between your practice manager, practice coordinator, and if you have a multiple practices, I mean, I know how hard it is to go through your email. By the time you go at home, oh God, you're tired already. So the key point here is to, while you are on the run, everything is here. Everything you can check how many, if you are running multiple practices, it's very easy. Okay, today we have a 27 new patients. That's cool. Okay, so here we have got a 3, here I've got a this. So you would have a clarity even on your go. So that's what we believe on, and our clients, certainly we have been implementing this for an over a year now. So the feedback has been amazing. I know it's a lot of work, a lot of work for the marketing company, but after all, we are all here for results. So if clients are converting those leads, and then obviously getting the feedback, everyone is on the game. That's what it is. And I hope that gives you a bit of the idea. But if you want to know more, I'm more than happy to give a quick jump on a demo and show you some of the practices, how we are helping through the new ways. Thank you. Anything besides that, Selena, do you have?
Yes,
please.
One more question for Dr. Michael.
Okay, Dr. Michael. So I will just put through to the Michael. 1 second. All right.
Yes. I'm keen to continue upskilling my team. The biggest thing is I'm reluctant to close off clinical time. That means it has to be done after hours. So is there any better way to do it?
Well, I'll just repeat the question in case people can't hear you. And the question was, I'd like to do training for my team, but what I don't want to do is sacrifice clinical time for training time. And that really is a great question, and it was very much top of my mind when I was looking for a solution to this problem. In fact, there's 2 problems that are associated with training. One is exactly that. It's very expensive. Usually the cost of stopping work is higher than the cost of the actual training. And so that's a big disincentive. So that's one part of it. The second part is that because whatever training we have, we tend to forget. We're now stuck in sort of a loop of you've gone to the expense of stopping the practice, you've done some training, and now because people forget so much, you have to keep redoing it and redoing it and redoing it. And so now you're in this to stop that problem. The solution has been that I've come up with, which is a system whereby each person's training is completely personalized. which means that they can access a video in their own time. Now, there's quite a lot of time opportunities during the day when something happens and there's a gap in the day. A patient is running late, a patient doesn't turn up. There's obvious gaps that happen in every practice. Even the most efficient practice will have gaps. The problem is, how do you use that effectively? Now, if somebody has to now stop and do a significant amount of training during that time, that isn't a good solution either. So the trainings need to be very, very short. Now, if you watch a video, a 5-minute video, anybody can do that during the day when there's a gap. Every person probably has 5 minutes somewhere along the line to watch a video. The next thing is, though, is using that video in such a way that we can cement the information into that person's mind. And the way to do that is to have a repetition process. And it's all based on the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve, which shows that we forget a lot of information. If you just did a course, 30 days later, you've probably only remembering 5%. But 1 day later, you're remembering 90%. 5 days later, maybe it's, you're remembering 30%, etc. So the way to do it is they watch a video, immediately they get a series of questions. The questions cannot be multiple choice because they're useless. Multiple choice, if you think it through, for soft skills doesn't make any sense, because imagine if the question was, how should you answer the phone? And you give somebody 5 choices. Probably one choice will make the most sense. The others don't make any sense at all. They're so obvious that people just select the obvious thing. You can't, so it's very hard to do multiple choice in soft skills. But what you can do is have the fill in the blanks system, whereby you have a question, you have some an answer. The person can put in the information, because there's, like, let's say, a blanks of 5 letters or something like that, or 10 letters, whatever the word is. They put that in. And now the system knows for sure, does this person know that information or not? If you repeat that process 2 days later, 5 days later, and 30 days later, every time you do it, that the person answers a question, it only takes literally 10 seconds to answer, so it doesn't waste a lot of time during the day. The system tracks exactly what the answers are. So now the system knows exactly what people know and what they don't know. And because they're repeating it, they will remember it. And if after a 30-day period, they are asked the question and they know it, we know now that's in their long-term memory. We'll then do a follow-up 6 months later just to make sure. And if somebody doesn't know it, the system records it and it repeats the process until they know it. So we end up with a system that doesn't involve humans, doesn't involve a training manager, doesn't involve any coaching or anything like that. The system literally tracks the whole process. I know that the explanation is a bit long and it's unusual in the way we're doing it, but it's all based on an app. And now the practice manager or owner can get a report for every single person in the system and see exactly where they are. So you see, we've now not had to close the practice. Now, some people like to have the team members get together, and they can still do that with this system. So you have the option of closing the practice and having everyone together to create some harmony, or following it up with individual tracking, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'd like to add to that too, because I've been watching you build this system and I'm amazed at what it can do. However, the original question, which said, I am reluctant to close my practice, I just want to challenge everyone who's thinking the same thing. I have this pushback a lot. I mean, if you are chopping a bunch of tomatoes and your knife is blunt, it's going to take you a very long time to get through those tomatoes. So I always suggest to people that they sharpen their blade. And to sharpen your blade, as in hygiene as well, you've got to stop and sharpen your blade. But what will happen once you sharpen your blade is everything will escalate from that point. So I encourage everyone to not only train in their own time, and of course, if you're asking your team to train in their own time and do something for you, you really do need to compensate them for that. But also training at the practice, I feel, is critical. And I know there's some practices out there that have some crazy, they have a huddle every morning, they have a staff meeting every week, they shut on Fridays for 2 hours. And honestly, they are the best, most productive practices around, in my opinion. So even though there's all of this automated training out there, please don't sacrifice, and please don't think of closing the door as necessarily a cost, because the practices that don't invest in training and closing to actually communicate as a team and create this wonderful collective intelligence amongst you, if you're unable to do that, your practice won't shift.
Absolutely.
The suggestion earlier about the WhatsApp group, I think, is fabulous. I've actually got quite a few practices now working and communicating each other with a WhatsApp group, but you need to put very strict boundaries around them. I don't think sending a message at 11 o'clock on a Friday night is the way to go. They need to be, you know, I also have other teams now that are getting around their practices with the little mic pack in their ear so that they can communicate throughout the day. And that obviously doesn't mean doing team training via the mic app, but it's just that collective intelligence again that, you know, escalates a practice.
Well, of course, for many years before I've come up with this system, you know, we're always recommending people to do training. There always was that problem that you do the training once, it's not enough, you have to do it multiple times. And now you're sort of, you know, you're starting to wonder, should I have done it? But clearly it's better to do the training than not do the training. But the best of all worlds is be able to do some team training, but then support the learning with individual training, and not have to close the practice and not have to ask people to work on Sunday afternoons, you know, when they've got families or whatever else. And so there's a lot of impracticalities associated with training, of course.
And the worst thing you can do is not train.
Oh, yeah.
And then people stay.
Sure.
Because people are always saying, "Oh, I don't know if I want to train."
Thank you so much, Sue and Michael. That was amazing, actually. So I just got one question. I'm conscious with the time. Obviously, we have got about 5 minutes, so feel free to ask. I just got one question for Dr. John. You know, we amazed with the slides what you have shown this morning. Anything you would like to add in new technology in dentistry, Dr. John?
Oh, look, I think it's changing, and you got to, you know, roll with the punches and try and innovate. And I think what Michael and Sue just mentioned, you know, the team training, you know, it's a huge investment to be able to allocate that time, but it's invaluable. And as technology gets better, you need to ensure the team is singing the same song or on the same page to get the best out of it. And as technology continues to make our patients' experience better and easier, if we're not got a team on the same page and interacting like a team, you lose the advantage, because technology can be used for the detriment of the practice and the patient if two staff members don't understand its value and its ability. So I think the communication through apps, and I think what Michael's talking about is sounds amazing. But I think you don't underestimate getting together as a family, as a practice, to build on the culture and the foundations to help grow. And I think, you know, practices that don't do that or don't invest in that, I heard Sue say there's practices that don't have a practice manager. Fundamentally, you need to grow and you need to be careful on what you spend. But if you don't spend and work on the business rather than in it, you miss on the potential to grow and benefit and let others do that work for you, as you can work as a practice owner in building your vision and your brand of the dentistry you want to do. So I think technology is just a tool that helps and facilitates that. And there's amazing things happening with AI in diagnosing and treatment planning and with clear aligners, those that are looking at scanners. There's near-infrared technology now that enables you to assess decay interproximally without needing radiology while you're assessing for orthodontics. So we're going to see in the next decade significant transformation in how dentistry looks like. But fundamentally, we're still having to interact with our patients. And if we haven't got a system or a team around us to support that, no matter how good the technology is, you can't use it and interpret it and then manage the patient's care.
That's a great point. So what you're saying is not about working in the business, but on the business. And I think you mentioned about the team cultures. You know, technology is changing rapidly, but at the same time, it's working on the business to understand the overall picture. A holistic approach is a key. Yeah, John?
Correct. Absolutely. Without that, you have nothing, right? So you need to have that team, and you're only as strong as your weakest link. All those euphemisms are important, but you need to start somewhere. So I think morning meetings, like Sue mentioned, are important, but getting together once a quarter, once a month, once a week collectively helps to build that culture to help build the brand and grow.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, John. That's a great insight. Now, just checking with Dr. Larkin, anything you want to add here in this conversation, Dr. Larkin? Sorry, we are just to mute. 1 second. If you could just unmute it, that would be wonderful. Beautiful.
No, I just want to thank everybody for the opportunity. I've just so much enjoyed this international forum and you know, just sharing. It's been an awesome experience for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Larkin. It's amazing to have you on board, and especially joining from US. And we are really looking forward to meet you in person. Yeah, can't wait.
Yeah,
that's good. Anything, Dr. John, you want to add before we wrap up? So I'll then hand over to Sue and Michael, and then yeah, we'll.
Thank you for having us. I hope everyone got some value out of that in the session, and it is quite amazing to be with an international group with Dr. Tom Larkin's expertise and obviously Mike and Sue's as well. So no, thank you for having me on board, and I hope those that have attended got some value out of it and hopefully help you on your journey to grow better, successful practices that you want. So thank you.
Okay, to Michael and Sue, anything you want to add?
I think there was one more question which I'll just touch on briefly that came up while the gentlemen were talking, and that is someone mentioned that they're concerned about employing a hygienist because she developed such a great relationship with the patients that she can leave and take those clients with her. So this particular doctor prefers to employ an associate dentist. I could answer that, but I'm going to ask
Please.
you.
No, you go ahead, Sue.
Okay, so my thoughts are it's wonderful that you're employing someone who's got such an amazing connection with your patients. And I don't think you have any control over where, if someone's going to leave or not leave. If that's what they want to do, that's what they have to do. There are legal contracts around, but you know, what's to say that your associate dentist isn't going to do exactly the same thing? So my question back to that doctor is, and perhaps something for them to think about is, I try very hard not to live in a state of fear of what if might happen, what could happen. What I concentrate on completely is delivering a fully high level, elevated, comprehensive level of care to our patients. And that's all I concentrate on. There's factors around that I can't control. Look, it's very rare these days that you're going to keep someone forever. So I don't know if that answers the question.
The only thing I'd add to that is that if you make your practice a real model practice, just make it better than everybody else's practice. And really what that means is there's just a lot of social skills that you need. You need to have communication skills. You need to have good systems. It needs to be highly efficient. It needs to be a friendly, pleasant place. If you can do that, then you're going to keep more people. Because if they look around and they're going to something that's worse, why would they leave you? And if they leave you, the only reason is because they're leaving town, in which case they're not taking the patients with you. So it's about constantly working on the practice and improving all those elements. And it's not just buying the best equipment, but it's making the place a nice place to work. And there's a whole skill to that. Quite honestly, that's in the program that I've written. Yeah. Because that's so important. I've got anyway, there's so many things that one could talk about with that, but I think we're probably running out of time.
Yeah, we are. So I thank everyone for listening to all of us today. Dr. John Hagliasis, Professor Tom Larkin, who it's probably 11 o'clock at night, at least there for him. Thank you so much for stepping in and giving us that amazing broad historical look at dentistry over the past 100 years and what's moving towards the future. To the amazing Michael Cernick. He hates that I edify him constantly, but you know, there's so much there's so much intelligence and collective intelligence in this room that we really want to help you, really want to share. Thank you for giving up your Sunday mornings to our cameraman and the lovely Shalina, and I will pass back to Mr. Pro to wind up for today and close off.
Thank you so much, Sue. Wow, I hope you enjoyed. I was just 1:03. We're conscious with the time. So thank you again for all the amazing speakers, Dr. Larkin. Thank you so much, Dr. John, Dr. Michael Senig, and beautiful Sue. Thank you so much. And our amazing supporters who have been supported, and obviously my amazing team who is here, all the crews who is working hard for this to make this happen. But more importantly, you who are watching this right now, who are here with us on Sunday, to spend a time with us, we see very, very valuable because obviously, you know, running the practice and with the lifestyle and the busy and kids and everything what goes on. But we are really thankful for the 3 hours so that you're here. And obviously with this event, we have proudly donated over 3,000 to Australian Dental Health Foundations, which is very near to our heart. Yeah, so just closing up now. Before I go, you know, I love the quote from Einstein. Insanity, you know, is all about doing the same thing again and again and expecting different results. Correct? So that's insanity. So my friends, it's time to, you know, you have watched and listened, and it's time to implement those strategies, those ideas, and how can you able to use it in your dental practice to get a better result, better outcome. On that note, best wishes to you and see you in the future events. Thanks. Bye for now.